Ow.
I love that this is going to be the start of the show. Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, hilariously, is my co-host Tom, who is currently, I guess, spilling something all over himself, as near as I can probably tell what's going on at this moment. Tom was like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And then he sat there quietly because we have to give it a few seconds to start. And then all of a sudden he's just like, oh, God, what is... And some Jerry Lewis bit ensues. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, guys. Hello, friends.
Your timing could not have been more perfect. I mean, it was literally as it was like, you're alive. What the... Oh, God.
Well, hey, I like to entertain. What can I say?
Sure.
And it's going to be entertaining tonight.
What we've been missing on the show is physical comedy. So
right.
I think that's the way to go.
Well, we just need more dogs. Like, bring more dogs. In the mix of dogs and just ridiculousness, I think we can get there with physical comedy.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we got a packed show for you tonight, folks. It's going to be a whole lot of stuff going on. It's just Tom and I, but that's okay. Don't worry. It's going to be a full house. Of course, we got a lot of news, and tonight we're going to talk about game design. This is actually going to be sort of a two-part series. This week, it's just going to be Tom and I. Oh, somebody said there's an echo. I don't think there should be. Tom has his good headset on tonight. I'll look and see if it's echoing. No, I'm getting...
No,
I don't see any echo coming through on the system.
I can turn down my gain a little bit.
Yeah, turn it down just a little bit. That's fine.
Yeah.
At any rate, you still seem to be coming in clear. So yeah, that's fine. Okay. At any rate, we're going to talk about good design. This is week 1. We're going to talk about some language. We're going to talk about AoS, and then next week we're going to broaden it out. I'm really excited about next week's show. It's going to be at an earlier time. We're going to have a special guest next week to come and talk to us about game design, somebody who does it professionally. This is going to be a great 2-week series, and then all of a sudden it's going to be an explosion of endless shows about Lumineth and Broken Realms and everything else that's going to happen from here until the end of time. So I realized if I ever wanted to do these game design shows, it was going to have to be like now as we sit on the precipice of a great wave ready to crash forth upon us. So, Tom, speaking of that great wave, let's do the news. What do we got?
Rumor engine?
Yeah, it's up. What is it, Tom?
I don't know.
It's an orc thing. I'm saying. It's an orc thing.
Yeah, probably.
There you go. This just continues on from my previous belief. We'll talk about that in just a moment, but we've said many times there's going to be a new destruction army, maybe new orcs of some kind. I think that we've said maybe orcs in the new launch box. It would make sense, right? We feel it's destruction. This is one of those orcs. There you go. Lock it in. That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Easy. We're in agreement. Excellent. Tom, what's next?
So there was a reveal show this weekend, apparently. I wasn't around for it, so you want to talk about that?
I had to replace you. Yes, that's correct.
I showed up and caught the tail end of the show.
I saw you jump in the chat there. So Tom, since we didn't get your opinion during our live reaction show, our good buddy John Ninus, awesome Ninjan, stood in as an excellent you. Somebody called it fake but good Tom. That's what John was. So I thought that was a good title for John. You should start putting that in his channel. At any rate, what was your take on everything? But what did you think of everything? The Soulblight Gravelords, the OBR Warband, Kragnos, Kragnarok. Let's start at the beginning. Soulblight Gravelords. What'd you think?
They're fine.
Yeah, okay. Easy enough. Did you like the Blood Knights?
I mean, so I posted this on, I don't want to go into a big rant on this, but I posted this on Twitter. Alexander Nygaard had a wonderful observation this evening, where he posted an image of the new crazy train vampire with the big crazy hair and the mask.
Yeah, sure.
Alongside like art from the 7th edition.
Yeah.
Vampire Kingdoms, and like literally, it looks like she just like walked right off the page.
Yep.
And I love it.
Sure.
You know, like the meme's been floating around where it's like shows like the 7th edition like cover to the battle tome,
multiple of the older covers. Yes, exactly.
Yes, which is the vampire in red armor around a horde of undead, and and then this cover,
they're the
and
same
like,
picture. Yes,
these are the same picture. Yeah.
Pam from The Office. Yep. These are the same picture. Yes. We can Darmok and Jalad Tanagra or whatever. Yes.
Yeah, and so like I love it. I love all of that, like the echoes of the aesthetic just coming through. I just absolutely love that, and like I love that it's mixed with some real world stuff and like a lot of the more like kind of Eastern aesthetics and like Eastern European specifically.
I understand what you mean.
And I just love what they've done with it for what it is, right?
Since we're talking about it, let's bring up new Vampire Lady. I know she's like our next news item, but there she is. There's new Vampire Lady. This is all related to Soulblight. They revealed this beautiful lady. This is the one Tom was talking about that had walked out of the 7th edition book or whatever. So, and yes, I think she's awesome. This sort of mosquito-esque vibe, right?
Yeah, like, and so it's just interesting to me because I love this for vampire players because they're getting exactly what they've always wanted.
Sure. I sense where this is going, but I'm going to let you keep going down this road. Go ahead.
I'm simply going to end it by saying I love that they're getting what they're getting.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, fair.
And I wish that we had done that elsewhere.
There we go. There it is. I was waiting on it.
No, I made no mention of any specific army.
Of course. All right, here's my question. I mean, they have been very exploratory with some of the vampire sculpts, right? Like Bat Hair Lady, this lady. These certainly aren't the classic aesthetics. Yes, I understand. This did feel like art in the 7th edition book, but we've never had a figure like this, is what I'm saying, right? Like, there is a difference between something in old art and what we've seen in the figures. This is very different than...
I mean, what I will say is this. This is, like the art piece I'm naming specifically, like her face is dead on.
Yeah.
Yes, the sword is new.
There's no way they weren't looking at that art as a reference, an inspiration for this model.
Yes. Yep. And so, I mean, what I would say is that I love that, like, but let me say it this way. You could put this in the old world and it would still feel right.
Sure.
Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
And so it was much like the Chaos Warriors that we've seen from a design standpoint, like aesthetic design, not game design. They are embodying like the heart of what that thing is.
Sure.
And I feel like they've done that with the vampires. Like, this is the heart of what vampire counts have always been.
Yes. And just to reference, I want to answer some comments real quick. She's in Cursed City, isn't she? This and the Rat King are both part of the Soulblight Gravelords release, but are also related to the Cursed City because the two things are very intertwined. Hence why the skeletons have the same basic sort of aesthetics and stuff like that. So it's probably there'll be like an expansion box where they actually give you multiple of these characters and ways to use them. That tends to be how they do this stuff. Damien 1 says, nobody wants to talk about the flying monster in the Soulblight Gravelords book cover. We did talk about it on Saturday. Everybody can go check out that show. My answer is either somebody's being very artistic with a vampire lord on Zombie Dragon, possible, or it's a redo of the vampire lord on Abyssal Terror, right? So
yeah, which would be fun.
Do you expect a left turn in this army, Tom? Are we going to get some weird stuff? There's probably more we haven't revealed yet.
No.
Okay. You think we're going to play it safe the whole way through?
I think that we could get a vampire lord on Abyssal Terror, for example, like a replacement equivalent of that.
Sure.
I think we could get some more like variations of the sort that we've seen in Cursed City. So I think we could get some feral vampires.
Sure.
Some like more bestial feral vampire. Like, I think that those are fully within the purview of what we might see. We're not suddenly going to get Frankenstein monsters.
Yeah.
Like flesh columns.
Yeah, I understand.
We're not suddenly going to get flaming skeletal infernal somethings.
Yeah, sure. We're still
Like,
19 initial. I was gonna say like 1975, but even then they had weird undead D&D. Right, like we're so far beyond the curve on potential weird undead here. Warhammer remains existentially locked in the most basic conception. It is the vanilla ice cream, the cheese pizza of what these monsters could be. Yes. I agree.
Yeah, we have not achieved 3rd edition undead.
No, God, no. We're nowhere close to that. Not even in the realm. Literally. At any rate, yeah, cool stuff. Excited for that. I thought what'd you think of the OBR guys? I guess this is probably where I think you'll say they're fine.
Yeah, he's good.
All right, now comes the important part, Tom. Who is Kragnos?
I mean, he's some Beast Joel named Big Baddie. I know you're pulling pretty hard for destruction.
Yes.
I suggested looking at it that it might have been Beast of Chaos. Like, it had those echoes. I mean, like, I'm gonna go out there and throw like a weird curveball. I'm gonna say that this could be our first gold faction. And that actually the Kurnothi are bridging order and destruction. And that this may be like a destruction leaning Kurnothi.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that's where I'm gonna go.
All right. Yeah, he's destruction. It's a destruction god beast. It's the guy under Beastgrave. So, anyways, and I'm hoping that we just tamp all this other nonsense down. Like, as I said, you can either agree with me or find out I'm right. So it's one of the two.
Sure.
I've called my shot on this one. Okay. So yeah, good stuff.
I hope that we get some of those silent people that look like they were like part and parcel with the scuttlings. You know, like the bone masks that have like the multifaceted eyes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, the question is how much of the silent, like obviously the silent people are
part of Beastgrave. Like you had mentioned.
Yeah, that's literally what he's talking about in the video, right? When he gets up, as he says, like, my people are gone, right? Like, oh, yeah. I woke up from the mountain, my people are gone. Like, it's pretty... They communicated a lot with, like, 2 sentences, right?
Yeah.
When you have a place called Beastgrave happening in a mountain full of the remnants of the silent people, you don't need a lot of words to communicate what you're actually trying to say. They just put it out there for us. And then we're all like, but it's a centaur! That's it. That's like as far as we got. So, there you go.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. Cool beans. Right on. Alright, what's next? What do you got next, Tom? There's so much more stuff.
Tabs are hard. I know there is. An FAQ dropped this week.
It did. Ho! Massive, big changes. Not really. No, but we got the FAQ to Doc and Slaanesh. How about I address the Doc first, or Slaanesh first, and you address the Doc first? How about that?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
The Slaanesh FAQ included nothing of note, and it's all of the obvious answers, and there was absolutely nothing fundamentally important about it. I appreciate them answering questions for people who had them. Everything was very clear. There was absolutely no mystery to any of that, nor was anything fundamentally changed. The only one interesting thing that happened in there, which I am appreciative of for those people who still want to do this, are they did include fixed rules for Selesky's host from White Dwarf, which was cool.
Which is nice.
That was very nice of them to do that. Certainly not necessary, so I appreciate that. I mean, it's pretty worthless now because it is still an allegiance without artifacts or command traits or the ability to take any of the new sub-factions from Wrath of the Everchosen. And what you get for all that is 1 extra depravity once a turn.
It's amazing.
Well,
just stunning.
Gonna be a hard pass from me. I never liked Celeste's host anyways, despite really loving Celeste and thinking. Like, I use Celeste quite a bit. But
I used to love Celeste.
Sure. I still do. Honestly, I've ran Celeste a lot, Tom. So I mean, this isn't about my games played.
Yeah.
But I've used Celeste quite a bit. She frequently finds herself, or they, sorry, frequently find themselves in my list because they're like just about the right points cost where they fit most of the time.
Sure. Yeah.
And I will say that it's been good. Like, as a hero, like, it's by the standards of that army. Okay? Like,
sure.
Understand where I'm setting the bar here.
Sure, I understand.
Okay.
By the standards of a terrible army, go on.
Sure. I've actually found them quite useful and have even sort of figured out ways to make that silly area buff actually start working. Like, either you have her alone or them alone in Lurid Haze.
Right.
So then there's
right.
0, right? And it's
right.
whatever, nothing's happening. Or more
right.
often, what I have her doing is on one side of the board with one of each unit. Like, she'll be a flank hero.
She tanks a flank with like some archers and a whatever.
Yeah, because she's a very they're a very self-sustaining hero, right? So
right. Yeah.
So there you go. So at any rate, this isn't about Celeste. The point is that was the one interesting thing in the Slaanesh thing. Yes, of course, Gludos's command ability works how it did. Final rating 2 out of 10 should have included points changes. We all know that the points are wrong. Everybody knows it.
Yeah. By about 30 or 40%.
Sure. Like, we all know the points are wrong. You can argue about how much, but we all knew it needed a drop. We don't need a lot of evidence for this. We just need to apply the magical power of common sense and going, okay, great. We didn't do that, but that's okay. Here's to 4 months from now when hopefully we do. All right, Tom, the doc FAQ. Hit me, buddy. What'd you think? Well, you want to talk about the actual items in it for folks who might not have read it?
Yeah, let's start there.
Okay.
So the biggest change, I'll hit that first.
Sure.
Was against all reason and common sense.
Sure.
And the design of the entire rest of AoS.
Yes.
Up until this point historically.
Yes.
They have now ruled that Doc Priests and Doc Priests only get 1 prayer per turn. Correct. Each, rather than being able to pray through what's on their war scroll and what's in whatever bonus ones they get in the book, as every other priest does in the game, including Stormcast and Khorne, and I could go on and on and on, and Fire Slayers.
Yep,
and
there was the other one.
Yep.
Sure.
So there's that.
Yep.
Okay. So it was just a very curious, weird change that really kicked, and then it makes it has remember how we've talked about secondary and tertiary consequences of design?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is what I was going to talk about, yeah.
It absolutely kicks in the teeth the Avatar of Cain's.
It does. It absolutely
because
does.
They are 100% like their prayer was a bonus prayer above beyond everything else, so that you could actually activate these guys and make them functional.
Mm-hmm.
That can no longer be done. And so they are now again relegated to the dustbin of worthlessness. So congratulations, GW. That's one of the shortest shelf lives we've ever had
on a model, on a turnaround. Yeah, like it was, this is so cool, we can use Avatar. Oh. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, avatars really did become like standalone avatars. Became near worthless overnight, right? Because you're almost
they just need to take it away.
You're almost never going to use the prayers to activate them at this point. You can't, because those are like all buffs you needed to use. And then literally that's just a statue standing there until turn 3 if you're not in Hagnar.
2 if you're in Hagnar. Right.
Now I could still see play for it in Hagnar, because you can actually because they didn't bother to answer this, there's some now open question of, can you cheat your way into all the statues being alive by putting the blessing on one of them that advances the turn in Hagnar, so that when one shoots to turn 2, because that unit now counts as being on turn 2, they all do. I don't want to get into the minutia of it. I don't tend to agree with that reading. But that's fine. The point of it is, if you're not playing Hagnar, your avatars basically aren't doing anything. And it was the wrong fix. So Ben Sava talked about this a lot on Honest
Mm.
Wargamer, and I tend to agree with Ben. The correct answer here, and we can talk about priests overall and balance overall. Like, yes, I agree completely. I hate the fact that priests are so uninteractive generally. Don't have
Yep.
any dispel. Don't have it. Their entire rule system doesn't even like exist in the core rules. It's just this weird bolt-on we decided to come up with that has no callback to the rules, right? So, do we need
Yeah.
to clean up priests? Yeah, sure, absolutely. But this wasn't the right fix for this army. The right fix for this army was they should be allowed to pray twice. Twice makes sense. Limit them to 2, right? So then you've got the choice of all the different things and, you know, whatever. And it should
Yeah.
have been and you should have pushed the points costs on the cauldron people back up. Not all the way up, but up. Like
Yeah.
that should have been the solution. They're like because part of what they might have thought about was, well, we made them so cheap, we should limit them to 1 prayer. And I just don't think that was the right answer because it functionally makes it so they can't actually fulfill the role they need to, and it really hurts a wide swath of units.
Well,
So,
and it really hurts the damage on the cauldron.
sure, and again, no part of this just to lay this down because I can see this already, and boy oh boy are we going to get into it later tonight. The immediate thing I can see a lot of the audience running to is Doc is still going to be fine. They're still very dangerous. Yeah, of course. Like they're fine. Like Doc is going to roll over you like it's like it's not even a thing. Like Doc didn't need this to win. Right. That's not the point. The discussion here is not competitiveness. Okay?
Right.
Like Doc is competitive. This doesn't really affect Doc's competitiveness.
I'm not like, and please hear me, folks. I am not critiquing the competitiveness of Doc. That's not what this is.
No.
This is like a quality of life change. And this is about creating compelling alternatives.
Yes, especially within the viability of lists, right? What you ideally want is this internal parity where lots of different units have different ways to be used and for people to make the list they want to use in interesting ways, right? Not powerful, interesting. And what you just did is like say, nope, all those fun lists that were using that stuff, right? That's gone.
Right.
And the right answer is like witches and snakes, supercharged, lock, stock, ready to rock. Forget your avatar nonsense. Forget all this other stuff. Just buff, kill. Buff, kill.
There were three probably different temples that I was seriously considering.
Sure.
Right? I will never run anything other than Hagnar now.
Yeah, it pushes a lot of people hard into Hagnar, right?
Because what it means is that if my cauldrons get into combat in turn 2, I would otherwise lose all of that damage.
Sure. Like we don't need to spend the whole show about this. We could. I mean, this goes to a pick of the week, which is if you want to see what I think is an excellent discussion of it. I'll link the Honest Wargamer chat with Ben Sava. Ben is a very careful, smart dude. He's been playing Doc a lot, and I think he discusses it very well, right? It's not a power concern. It's not a should prayers be fixed as a whole, because he agrees, yes. We all agree with that. It's that this was the wrong change for this army for no reason, that incapacitates like units in their army for just reasons that don't have anything to do with power. This wasn't reining in, witch elves being at Rend Neg 2 or something, running over you for 1,000,000 damage.
Right? Yeah, because ironically, this didn't change anything of what those priests are going to be doing.
Right.
Their number 1 pick will always just be chant their free prayer that they got, as part of their allegiance. Yeah. Like, that's what they're going to do, because that's why they took them.
Right.
Right? And so now, what it says is all of that prayer stuff that's written on their war scroll, you just delete it, because you will never use it.
Yeah. The problem with Doc right now, where it needs to be fixed, is obviously in the points. They're dramatically underpointed. Like, dramatically underpointed. But this wasn't this was a nonsense fix. And I think part of what happens here when we get into this is when an army's overpowered, sometimes we like cheer any fix that we feel like it weakens them because you want to see them brought down a peg. I want to see Doc brought down a peg too. As the Slaanesh player who had to watch that book come out at the same time as my book, I'm I'm over here with a baseball bat ready to hit him in the knees, believe me. But this is it was just not the right
As
change.
Also a Doc player.
Mm-hmm. As also a Doc player, yes. But I hate myself. And in the proper Slaanesh fashion. Anyways, so that was one change. Like I said, go watch that. It's fine.
Yeah.
It is what it is. What else changed?
There are some other, so there are some other changes. The Hagnar buff, the word save augmenter from the command ability, the command trait that moved them from a 6 to a 5 up, was confirmed to only affect normal wounds, not mortal wounds.
Yeah,
which is a pretty significant, like, moving the needle against some armies, but against many armies, it's not that big a deal. Like,
I can't believe we've gone this far down this road of fixing this in a weird way when it was wrong originally. Like, I just don't get it. Like, why? How are we this far down this road? Okay, the correct fix for Hagnar was move it to a 5 up, kill Blessing of Cain because it's a stupid prayer that shouldn't exist, and rein it in to be a unit wholly within its bubble. That was it. Everybody knew that was the fix. And instead, we kept Blessing of Cain. We made it models within so we can still string out for reasons I'll never understand. And then to like counterbalance the power of that, we said, oh, this one save thing is like the one time in the game where it takes a base rule that works on wounds and mortal wounds, and instead of like changing the value for the rule, it changes the value and what it works on.
Yes.
So like,
yeah, and so you created a corner case where it's more bookkeeping, because now you have to explain to people that oh no, those are 6 ups against mortals, but against all of your weapon they're 5 ups. So against your Hearthguard Berserkers, when they don't roll natural, when they don't roll natural 6s, I get 5 ups rerollable. But if you roll a natural 6 and it's immortals, I only get 6 up rerollables.
Yeah, right. So like, it just okay.
Like it's minutia, and it's bad design, I'll say.
Yeah, sure. It's minimal comparatively to what we're going to talk about tonight, but
right,
yes,
absolutely.
But
yeah,
like,
it's just what it is. It's introducing complexity
when it doesn't need to be there.
Doesn't need to be there.
100%.
Right. And that's exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because what it's going to do is people are going to get lost in those nuances.
Sure, and accidentally make their 5 ups against mortal wounds and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And it's going to create just bad conversations and bad feels around the table.
Sure. Sure.
Okay, so what other changes?
Let's talk about the biggest change. Heartrender. Back to Neg 2. Shortest existence of Neg 1 for a while. Marathi's spear got a little dulled after she went and killed a lot of, well, didn't kill, but defeated a lot of Stormcast with it. Got dulled on that Aether Gold armor or whatever, Sigmarite armor, sorry. So she had to take it back, have the iron scales, sharpen it back up, and now it's back to Ren 2. Sure. Okay. Like, cool beans. She's a beast again, fully.
Yeah, like, okay, well, she's stabbing people in the face again. And, like, it's going to be really good and cool. Like, I don't know. Like, that's a nice adjustment. That feels good. Yeah, I don't know. The other clarification, I was really curious. Joe Cryer had a great call out to this on the first treatment that Honest Wargamer did on Monday when the fact dropped, in the FAQ dropped. Rob and Joe did a show, and one of the things Joe talked about that was really curious, and I agree with him, is that Shadow Patrol, the way it's currently worded, every unit can teleport. Like, all 6 of them, rather than, like, 1 unit per turn, like it was in the first doc book. So it's kind of like Change Host.
kind of. Yeah, that's an FAQ needing an FAQ, clearly. So good call, Joe. My guess is nobody asked.
Yeah, I don't know. They were silent on it. It was really curious. So hopefully that gets changed. Otherwise, like, all of the Shadow Patrols will be really funny. I'll be happy to see some guys on the table. Oh, and Calibron. That was the other change. The Calibron.
Yeah, they cleaned up that sentence. It was clearly a typo. Yeah, as we guessed. Yep. So yeah, that was good. Keith Reimer said, Vince, do you think that we as a community are too quick to want GW to nerf or rein in the latest Battletome Codex when we don't know what's coming next? As a whole community, yes, 1,000%, because we overreact to everything. as myself, I try to work very hard to have to really like think critically about this, use 23 years of playing this game experience, and to level out my opinions. The fact that I play 17 armies, the fact that I know what most of these things feel like, and, play weekly and stuff like that. If I say I think the points are too high and it needs an adjustment quickly, I stand behind that. I stood behind it, like Change Host was broken, and like the things that I called for to happen immediately are actually things we saw pretty immediately, or that they eventually did. Like, Change Host being too powerful, Sally's being too few points, that kind of stuff, right? Croak is still too few points, and yet that dead frog is still, that desiccated mummy is still there. So I guess I don't win all the time.
I mean, and you're strangely off on your call for Slaanesh 1.0 as well.
Well, sure. Oh, no doubt. I mean, look, dude, I was in that. I said it was fine, and I was wrong. I've said that like 100 times, but I'll say it 100 more. Like, I was dead wrong, right? When you're blinded by something you love that much. Tom, you've been in love before. You know what it is.
I have.
You don't see the flaws when you're first in love. You're smitten.
Yep.
What are you gonna do?
Yep.
But over time, the flaws did become apparent to me, and we had to have a falling out.
You also were one of the first to say encourage people to voluntarily shelve them until they were fixed.
I was.
So
absolutely, which I did as well.
So, yeah. So those were the FAQ changes. Really interesting.
Interesting stuff overall. I was happy to see, as I predicted, the Sons of Behemoth update to add the new, we can walk over these things now too. Love it. Maybe just make a keyword or something, or just call those a thing, but that's fine.
You know, we have a keyword for these.
Well, you can just call them endless prayers. We're all okay with it.
No. We have a keyword. Whatever the nexus is,
or whatever.
No, there is a word for an Aether nexus or whatever. Whatever the term was used for IDK's boats.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
They were something that had been
something. Yeah.
Yeah, that were summoned onto the battlefield, right?
Yeah.
Like we already have the tech in place at the end of the last edition that didn't get carried over in 2.0.
Missed it by that much. Hey, 3.0's coming, so we're good. Okay. What's next?
Okay,
Tom?
what else? FAQ. Oh, so we had a bunch of things on pre-order this weekend. A lot's dropping, including the new LRL books, plural.
Yeah. I did appreciate their Facebook post that was like, which book do I need to buy? Now, the fact that you have to make a Facebook post is telling, but...
Do you have the old book? Buy Techless. If you don't, buy the new book. Or if you're an idiot like me, buy the new collector book. So, one of those,
You know you bought the limited edition one again. You know you did.
Maybe.
Look, Tom, it's fine. It's fine.
Maybe.
Look, man. You don't think I bought... when I got my new Slaanesh limited edition tome, I walked over to my bookshelf. I have like a side for retired books and a side for current books, right? And I took the old limited edition Slaanesh book and slid it over there and then put the new one in its place. Like, yep. The cycle is now complete. At any rate, yeah, it's fine.
I mean, it has the Sword Masters on the cover.
It does. It does. There you go.
Yep.
So many new kits. Oh my god! I cannot believe they dropped this all in 1 week. We've got the Rue Riders. We've got all the heroes. We've got the Monkey King on the cloud. We've got the whole shooting match, the terrain, everything. We did see prices. Not sure if you saw. Did you see all the prices, Tom?
I did not. I'm not buying any of the models at the outset.
I am. I've already put in my order for some of the Huracan and Wind Chasers. That's not a lie or a joke. That is true.
What?
Because I'm going to steal the mounts and turn them into Slickblade Seekers. Because I think they'll go faster. Because these are the fastest unit in the universe. As per rules, we got spoiled, which we'll talk about in a moment. Yeah, so I'm going to take the Wind Riders and put Slaanesh people on top of them. And
on the clouds?
No, the Huracan and Wind Riders. The Rue Riders.
The Rue Riders, got it.
Yeah, the Rue Rider Cavalry. Those are like, I'm going to turn those into my Slick Blade Seekers.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I really hated putting together Slick Blade Seekers. They were a nightmare, and I hated them. And I'm never putting together another pack of them. But I do want to have another unit, hence this. There we go. Yeah, I mean, most of the prices look pretty in line from what I saw. Notable things: the Huracanen are like the super expensive cavalry. Well, not super expensive, I guess. That's not true. I mean, they're 60 US. That's pretty reasonable, actually. There's more expensive cavalry out there. The Venari Blade Lords are
Baron Guard.
What's that?
Baron Guard.
Yeah, absolutely. The Blade Lords, which is the Sword Masters, are also $60. The bigger characters are 55. So 5
Blade Masters. Is it 5 for 60?
I don't know. I don't know how many come in the box. I have no idea. I'm just looking at. It's not what I'm looking at, Tom.
I hope it's not 5 for 60.
I would assume it's 10.
I would assume so. I hope so. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, at any rate, but like most of it was what you think. Like the little Wind Mage Cloud Rider is 35. The Banner Blade dude is 35.
Well, that's not bad.
35 the two like normal standalone characters are 30. Like the little guys on foot, like the guy with his Bob Ross magic paintbrush and stuff like that. So, yeah. I mean, all stuff seemed where it was. The important part that also got announced, we got our 4 battalions. We were wondering, battalion boxes, sorry. We were saying, are they going to happen? Are we getting them? The answer, yes, indeed we are. So we are getting Horrocks Dreadlance, the Invidian Plague Host, Zintil War Magi, and Mortavelli's Hell Court. There you go. Cool. Tom, do you remember what these things are? What do these battalions contain? Let's play a game, Tom. What do these battalions contain? We'll start with the easy one. Mortavelli's Hell Court. What does Mortavelli's Hell Court? And no looking, Tom. I see you Googling right now. No looking.
No, my hints are...
Okay.
Arch Regent.
Yes.
6 of the big crypt guys.
No. 3 of the big guys.
3 of the big guys. And 20 ghouls.
That is correct. There you go. That's right.
Too much value. I thought there was more value in that.
No, box. It's okay. It's okay. The Hell Court is, but I mean, it's the cheaper one. The Hell Court is 80. The Zinthithil.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, it's not. It's 80 US. Yeah, it's a good deal. The Zinthithil War Magi, which is 2 Huracanum / Luminarchs and a Foot Mage or whatever, I guess.
Well, the Foot
Mage is the extra guy. So it's just 2 Huracanums. Yeah.
2 Huracanums. Yeah, that's just 2 kits.
Yeah, that's $80 as well. The Invidian Plague Host, which is a Slobbity Bile Piper, a Spoilpox Scrivener, and a bunch of Plague Bearers.
20 Plague Bearers. Yep.
Which is funny. Is 90. And Horrocks Dreadlance, which is 10 of their heavy cav. Plus the Liege Cavalos is 115. It's the expensive. So there you go. Tom's breaking more stuff as the prop comedy continues.
This is what happens when I start hobbying again.
No, it's fine.
I got all these models all around me. It's the worst.
So we know that these are going to have new rules for battalions that include units like this in there.
Yep.
Which is great.
Yep.
I have already ordered my Flesh Eater Courts one. Mortavelli's Hell Court. It's the perfect base for my Smash Bat list.
I might actually order one as well.
Yeah. I mean, look, man, if you're looking for Smash Bat, it's a great start because it gives you all the ghouls you need. Gives you a start on either your Flare or your Flayers or your regular Cryptors you need.
My son was wanting to do Flesh Eater Courts. And I told him that we would wait and see what was in Techless before we did that. And with this, like, he needed an Arch Regent, right?
Yeah, sure.
And absolutely. So, like, between, like, this box gives you the Arch Regent. And then couple that with, like, a couple, like, getting started boxes. And it's literally the entire army.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so easy. This was a great addition to the Flesh Eater Courts world. But, like, between that and getting the new Varglek or whatever that I can use as a Vargulf. Like, it was at the Smash Bat list. What could I do but go Super Smash Bat? Like, I had to do it. So, anyways, plus, the more I see of Soulblight Gravelords, the more I know I'm not going to collect that one. So, because it's just Legions of Nagash 2.0.
It is.
It is.
100%
so,
Legion.
didn't interest me the first time around. You're not getting me this time around. I'll probably paint a few of these vampire people just because they're fun. But, so, happy with all those battalion boxes. Good. I hope we get a little more stock this time, but somehow I doubt we will. No, we did not talk about the new LRL rules for this week, Mr. Chase. Don't worry, we will.
We're getting there.
Yeah, so I was on board for that one. So yeah, I'm happy to see them, especially because when you figure that's the retail, and then of course you're going to get, discounts anywhere you buy those. It's actually quite a nice deal for those boxes. So as usual, these are cool. Important part, Tom. How excited are we that there could be a battalion? Hold on. Are you ready for this, Tom? We might live in a world where a Spoilpox Scrivener and Slobbity Biopiper have some purpose in a battalion.
Nope. Don't believe it.
I'm just saying, it could happen, Tom. It could happen. Don't poo-poo my dreams here, Tom, okay? We all want these guys, these coolest models in Nurgle, to actually have a purpose, right? So I'm just saying, let's make it happen, Captain.
Sorry, I was literally ordering the Flesh Eater core box
right now.
Right now, it just dawned on me that I was like, I probably ought to do that just in case stock's going to be low.
Yeah, it will be. At any rate, yes, like we could get new War Scrolls for them, Tom. That could happen.
I mean, we'll see.
Hey, look. Slobbity Biopiper and Spoilpox Scrivener are two of the coolest models they've ever made for...
It's true.
Certainly for most armies and certainly for Nurgle. And yet, like, they have had the junkiest of junk rules for the longest time. Come on, guys. Come on.
I mean, if they were just, like, repointed and put in a better battalion.
Look, just do something with them. It'd be cool. You could, like, there's lots of ways. We all want to see it. Fingers crossed. So, Broken Realms tech list continues to be interesting. I want to know what the battalion is that's just 2 Hurricanums and a Battle Mage. I want to know what this battalion's about.
Well,
I
want to know
it's the Light City battalion.
And that's what I was going to say is, I don't care about the battalion.
You want to know what the city rules for the Heist City that
I want to know about
those 4 units of Lumineth.
That's exactly right.
Uh-huh.
Tell me more about this cities that can take Lumineth units.
Yeah.
Go on.
We know it's coming. They've set up that city in the short stories. We've got this battalion that's clearly meant to be Heishi. Do it.
Yep.
Do it. Give us the song.
Yep. So they have my attention. So yeah, so I've ordered a bunch of I have a big order that I've put in. Yeah, so that's I'm excited about that. I'm excited about
Hamza says he needs to know what the Smash Bat list is. It's 2 Royal Mordant battalions in Hollow Morn. I'll let you figure out the rest yourself. But that's really the secret of it. 2 plus an Arch Regent and a regular Ghoul King. That's it.
Yep.
It is a 4-drop list. You can look it up on Honest Wargamer. They do have Smash Bat there for you to reference. They've got a couple different versions of it. So check it out. And
yes, Smash Bat can smash that.
And no, there are no Terrorgeist, no big monsters at all. It's all little guys, and the Vargulf is your biggest monster. And Smash Bat can smash that. Yes, he can.
But he is enough.
He averages on his average rolls, assuming you get the buffs off, he averages 70 damage in his attack against a unit with a 4+ save. And that's the kind of numbers I like to see. So if the question is, can Smash Bat smash that? The answer is usually yes. Because most people can't withstand that kind of punishment.
Unless, like, it's like a unit of Hearthguard Berserkers.
Then the answer is no. You're still going to lift a bunch of them. I'm just saying. Even they're going to take some punishment.
Because you're going to hit first. Like, he's going to die before he ever swings.
I'm assuming that they've somehow lost that ability in this instance.
Sure. Tell me about
will
that.
Alone. Yes. By will alone, I set my Smash Bat in motion.
Noted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And thank you for the shout out, Shorts. Appreciate it. Okay. What's next? What's next on our news? I know what's next, Tom. Boom! It's LRL rules teasers. Yes. So we've been getting a bunch of LRL rules teasers all weeks. And none of those matter at all as far as determining how powerful or competitive an army is. I just want to say that right up front so we all understand that nothing that we're about to talk about has anything to do with power, because until you know the whole picture, unit, size, saves, moves, wounds, points, rolls,
cost of the unit points.
like that's all stuff of how you determine power.
Yeah.
Eels, the like offensive eels at 100 points would be like the best unit in the game ever, and even more dominant than they are now. A unit of 3 eels. A unit of 3 eels at 1,000 points for 3 would be the worst unit in the game. See, so like you can't read one rule like a zappy zap and a move speed and know how good they are. Okay. So, first I want to talk. I don't have it up right now, but we saw the Wind Rider rules. Thanks.
Yep.
I hate it.
I love it.
I'm sure you do.
Like, there's going to be so much cheaty movement shenanigans that are going to come out of those guys. Like, they're going to be like, and I drift away. You can no longer fight now. But because...
So to explain this, since I don't have the graphic up, I'm sorry I didn't grab that graphic. But the first thing they shared was the Hakanan Wind Riders, who can pile in 6 inches when they charge and fly, and do not have to pile in to the nearest unit. They can just go wherever they want. Okay, and
to the moon.
So this is a unit that, regardless of what its normal move is, we know there will be some way to make them move 16 inches, because that was in the same article. You can have, if you've got your little Wind Rider guy, he can make them move 16.
And fly.
And fly. So they can fly 16 in their movement. Assumingly, they'll also be a valid target for the double their movement spell.
Yep.
So assumingly they can fly 32 inches.
Yep.
Then charge. Then pile in 6 inches flying in any direction they want.
Including not ending near any units.
Any units. The obvious play here is these guys can steal an objective off you from anywhere they are, because they will shoot across the table at like 1,000,000 miles an hour, charge you, and then pile in 6 inches around you to 3.1 inches. So they're no longer in combat with you, and they just all pile 6 inches onto the objective. Okay.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's shenanigan-horrific. I hate it. Just more of overbaked LRL rules. And again, I'm not talking about powerful. I'm just like, I see they got one rule that broke 3 core rules. Most people are lucky if they get like some kind of bonus in a rule without a limit. Slanesh.
Right.
But they got one rule that broke 3 different rules. Sure, why not?
I mean, it seems kind of elfy to me.
Sure. I agree with Coach. Steal the objective off my Gargants, you little jerks. Yes, there you go. 5 of them can't take them from you, Coach. That's true. Assumingly they, and who knows, what they're... And again, it's not about power. It's about being dumb.
Who knows?
Although this could be very if those guys are pointed cheap, then that rule will catapult them to very powerful. But they could be clear, they could be straight trash. That unit with that rule could be straight garbage.
Yes.
Okay?
Because if they can't actually do anything.
Right. If they were 2 wound models with bad bow shots that cost too much points by even 10 or 20 points.
And they hit on 5 for melee.
And they hit on 5s in melee or something, or 4, even just like if they're 4s and 4s with no rend 1 damage, if that's literally what they're like, 1 attack, 4s and 4s, no rend 1 damage or something, right? Then yeah, they could be a bad unit. I would still hate that rule. Because it's nonsense. Like, are we just writing LRL rules and then just like, well, how much more can we add? It's like stuffing a bear at Build-A-Bear. You just keep shoving it in there. Just keep shoving it in.
They just have a checklist of all the core rules and see how many times they can check the boxes of violating rules.
Right.
That's what's going on here.
Yeah. But let's talk about Sun Metal, Tom. Let's talk about these Great Blades, because that's what I've got up on screen right now. This is our Swordmasters rules. So I'm going to say nothing.
I love me some Swordmasters.
Yeah, so this is the new Swordmasters rule. So what do you think of these, Tom? Obviously, Swordmasters have 2 different attack profiles. One that's 2-inch range with 1 attack that auto hits, wounds on a 2, neg 2 rend 1 damage. And then the other that is a flurry of blows that has a number of attacks equal to the number of enemy models within 2 inches of the attacking model. And then is 3s, no rend, 1 damage. Assumingly, the flurry of blows can still trigger Sun Metal mortal wounds because it's making a hit roll, right? Because they're Sun Metal weapons. Sun Metal probably mortal wounds on a 5 or 6+. Probably has some ability to get the spell cast on it to make it a 5+. Probably. That's assumptions, but probably. If they continue like every other Venari unit. They can, because they're Venari, they can probably set up in Shining Company, so they can be neg 1 to hit. They have a 4-up spell shrug for simply existing. All of that kind of stuff. Again, we're not going to judge power, because I don't know how many wounds, the rest of their save, I don't know how much they cost. They could be hot garbage. They could be the greatest thing on 2 legs. But we are going to talk about design, since that's the name of this week's show.
I suspect that this unit is what instigated Vince's decision to cover this topic this week.
It absolutely was. It absolutely was.
No, you know what? I love the ability for them to stance.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like that they are communicating that they are superior swordsmen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think that the perfect strike is a trap most of the time, except when it's not. Let me say that.
Sure. Like when you want to execute a hero or something.
Right. Like, if you're lining up on like Archeon, for example.
Sure.
Like the perfect strike.
Anytime you're trying to execute a single model. Yes.
Right. That's the right answer. But most of the time, that's a trap, which means most of the time you're going to want to use Flurry of Blows. And in that instance,
because you're fishing for a ton. You're fishing for a bunch of attacks that are going to proc mortal wounds.
Yep. But in that instance, it's going to be a nightmare. And we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. So, yet again, thanks. I hate it. I dislike this from top to bottom. I like a full 0% of this. Okay?
So if it was a head design,
I would have sent this back.
He'd be like, go back to your office and think about what you've done.
Correct. This is incorrect. This is wrong. But I would explain to the person why they've done it.
No, you wouldn't. You'd say, I want an essay of the top 3 things you've done wrong and why you think you've done them wrong.
Right.
And then we'll talk about all the ways that you're wrong.
Yeah, correct. So, okay. Here's why I hate this rule. Okay? Why I think this is bad design. Let's get into it. Let's talk about perfect strike first.
We have other segments. You can't just change. You can't jump it into the main body segment.
I'm going to set it up now. Okay, we'll get to it later. This is a setup.
That's fine.
Here's why I think this is bad design. Here, I'll burn through it quickly, and we will dive into this later in the meat of the show. Perfect strike, auto hitting is never good. That's just silly. It's a silly rule. Because it takes the interactivity out of the game. The number one thing on the NPE survey that people said they don't like is interactivity being reduced. Well, this is the definition of that. Got a neg 1 to hit, got a neg 5 to hit, got a neg million to hit. Who cares? You auto hit. Even if they were 1+ to hit, it would have been better. Because then at least there's some kind of interactivity with the dice. Okay? Like, I can actually, have Geminids get thrown at them and have them attack goblins with netters and make them at least miss something.
Well,
okay.
So here's what I'm going to say, Vince. I think you're wrong because in this instance specifically, because as I said, I think that the perfect strike is a trap. Most of the time, they're actually going to be doing their area, flurry of blows, and your minuses to penalties to hit will actually affect them.
Again, I'm talking about the perfect strike side of it. When they do this, it's a silly rules interaction. It shouldn't be there. A lot of characters who they'll be using perfect strike on survive based on having negatives to hit.
Sure.
For various and sundry reasons. Like, one of the most common things you see characters take is a neg 1 to be hit in melee. Haha! Too bad for you. Wrong choice. Okay? So it just ignores a whole section of the game. Second thing I don't like about Perfect Strike number 2 is it communicates something narratively just ridiculous and stupid. Okay? Let me tell you what this rule says narratively. You ready? Here we go. These are the best swordsmen in the entire Mortal Realms, period. There is no god, no vampire lord, no demon, no great warrior or child of Sigmar, no warrior, no matter how forged, no matter how tested, no matter how good, not Sigvald, not the Light of Eltharion himself, not Gotrek,
including Gotrek,
not anyone is as good of a swordsman as some random elf from this unit.
It's so good. I love it.
Because all of them still have a chance to miss. And these guys do not. Not to mention the fact that their to wound is better than almost most of these gods and greater demons and people we're talking about too, who almost consistently have 3-ups to wound.
In Archaon.
Sure, absolutely.
The Mary Sue of the universe.
There is no being in the Mortal Realms that shows such pursuant skill at arms
as decorated.
Some random elf. I have a real problem with that narratively.
I want to run an entire army of these guys.
And I just mean use of a weapon. Right? They are the unmitigated weapon masters. There's no one better. Period. This is it. Whoever you think your person is, I don't care who you're repping. Like in spellcasting, we can have these little debates of who's the good spell dom. These are simply the best weapon users. Period.
Just like Teclis is the best spell dom?
No, because that's not necessarily true. There actually are, gives and takes to that. In this, they're like, just mathematically, it is the case. That's real annoying. Okay, now let's talk about the Flurry of Blow side, why this is bad design. Because when we did this with Decimators, who you tend to have like 2 of, it was annoying to calculate.
Or Chain Ghasts, which nobody has ever taken but me.
Who, again, also you tend to have like 2 of. Right?
Or 4.
Sure.
4.
They come in 2s, right?
Right.
Just like Decimators. These guys don't come in units of 5 or 10 or 20 or however many they're going to have here, where I now have to go around with this 2-inch stick and go 1, 2, 3, 4. Do I have that guy? Here, look over. Do I have that guy? Yeah. Okay. 5. All right. 1, 2, 3. 4. Okay. Yeah. 4, 5. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
1, 2,
they'll probably be
3.
in units of 5 to 15.
Sure.
So you only have to do that for like 15 models for each unit.
Right. Cool. Yeah, cool. Like, even a steam gun is nowhere close to this. Because, again, a steam gun is one model that I sweep an 8-ounce stick from and go this many. And even it takes too long. Like, I agree. I don't like Decimators and steam guns and chain gas. They all take long because you get to have this little fight over exactly what's in there. But at least those are like onesies or twosies.
Imagine
Desolators,
me
if I didn't mean Decimators. The Dracoth riders with the big axe. Who can keep any stupid Stormcast names?
Vince, imagine me running this army.
Yeah, you would be so persnickety about this. And I love, like, obviously what you're gonna you want to get because every one additional thing you get is one more chance for a mortal wound. Right? And yes, of course, you're double counting models here. Yeah, if you've got one guy in range of 3 of them, then that one guy adds 3 attacks to the unit. Right?
Yep. Yeah, so like against a unit of like 10 goblins, 10 of these guys, because what they're are they 2-inch reach or 1-inch?
They're 2-inch reach.
They're 2-inch reach. So like feasibly you could have, I don't know, solid 50 attacks at least against 10 goblins.
Yeah, like this is such nonsense. And by the way, I saw some people saying bring back templates. Yeah, templates didn't solve this either. I played for 20 years with templates. You know what that did? Cause arguments. Because we'd hold the template over him and be like, was that dude in or not? Am I getting the corner of his base? Like, and that was when they were in rank and file squared up blocks, not clouds. So like, I hate everything about this. Really,
it's going to be such a time sink. It's going to be so outlandish of a time sink.
Slow. It is. Like, why LRL are like time sink the army. Between their interrupting you with their actually on everything you do. Okay, and the fact that they have so many things that are so fiddly, like their
Yep.
dumb Geometrica push or whatever, like all that stuff. Anyway, yeah, I don't like this, and
How do
I
you
think it's a
really
direct example of bad design. And again, that is not a statement on power. These guys could be hot garbage. I would still say this is bad design. Okay,
Well, we probably need to unpack that in the body of the show as
we
to
will.
what is bad design
Yes, and
and
which
what
is
is
what
good
we'll talk
design.
about today. Yes, and we're an
Yep.
hour into the news. I know. I'm sorry. This is a really long show.
I tried to get him to stop and he wouldn't.
I
Okay,
couldn't.
finally, AOS third edition. There's a rules rumor that Grimdark Live dropped,
Yes.
and it's
Who's in the chat, by the way?
spicy.
Hey,
It's
Grimdark.
spicy.
It is spicy. So let's talk about the rules. All right. This is as per Grimdark Live. Coming to us, our infield reporter, Grimdark Live. Hopefully, he's still in the chat. I saw him there earlier. Age of Sigmar 3.0 dropping in July. New board size. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna go beat by beat here, Tom. Of do we buy it? Okay.
Yep.
Individual lines. Age of Sigmar 3.0 dropping in July. What's your odds that this is correct? Do you buy it?
Yes. Yep. 100%.
100% agreed. 1-to-1. New board size 44 by 60. Do you buy it?
100%.
I agree. 100%. It is happening. Get on the train. The second they did it with 40K and it's 4 Warcry boards, it's like, yep. It was that train left the station and is barreling toward us. Massive box set with Stormcast and a Destruction Army being the launch box.
Considering this was my original call
Sure. Yeah, this was your original
last
call, yes.
fall, 100%. I buy it.
Okay. Absolutely agreed. I'm in for this one. 1-to-1 odds. I think that's absolutely what the launch box is going to be.
And let me just say, also, a lot of this corresponds with some of the things I've heard, like whispers of in the dark corners of the internet.
Sure.
So, like what Grimdark is reporting, I've also heard from likely other sources.
Sure. Possible new Destruction Army released. He mentions a couple that it could be. Do you think we'll get a new Destruction Army?
Yes, I do. And I actually think that it will probably be aligned pretty closely with the silent ones.
Okay. Okay.
But I don't think that I don't think it'll be a new race. Let me say that.
Gotcha. I'm saying 2-to-1 on a new Destruction Army.
Like I had originally
silent.
said, well, I don't, but you're misunderstanding me.
Yeah, I get you. I got what you're saying.
I think that it will be related to, like, I originally thought orcs. I think orcs are going to be front and center. I've already said that.
Yeah, which I agree with.
But I wonder if, like, when you look at the masks for the silent ones, like, it has orky designs.
Sure.
And so I just wonder if it's not going to be some outworking of, like, silent ones, like silent orcs.
Yep.
Like silent orky ones.
All right. Charge reactions coming back. Units can flee, stand, and shoot other things or whatever. And then there's a thing that says maybe reaction points. Do you buy this?
Dear God, I hope not.
Okay. I'm going 2-to-1. This seems exactly like the type of thing they would do at an edition change. Because doesn't this feel like what they would want to do? Call back to those old rules of announcing your reaction to the charge. I don't think they'll create a new resource. I think they'll just use like command points or let you do it like once a turn. You know what I'm saying? Like they'll make it limited in some way like that. I don't think they'll introduce a whole new subsystem. But tell me that doesn't feel like exactly the type of thing they want to do.
Oh God. Like the reason why I don't like it so much is because it sounds like something they would do. And like it feels like the type of change that they've made from going from first edition AOS to second edition when they added command points from command abilities to command points.
Sure.
And it feels like what they did was they went, you know what we need more of? Responses.
Sure.
You know, I really like how handgunners do this thing when people charge them. And they're like, yeah, let's do that across all armies.
Again, it's just the old Warhammer Fantasy charge reactions, if that's the case, right? That's all it is.
Yes.
Real quick, I want to answer a question in the comments here. Just real quick. Glodin said, haven't started playing AOS yet. If a new edition is coming soon, is it worth learning the current rules? My answer is yes, undoubtedly. Because I don't actually expect much of the rules to change. Like, even if all of that
Yeah.
was true, that's basically not much of a change from the current rules, other than adding some maybe new options of ways to spend your command points or something, right?
Yeah, like what I would anticipate is that if they will take what they currently have and then maybe some aspects of some phases may get a little bit more complex.
Right.
So what the core of the rules are now is probably the core of what the game will be in the summer.
Yeah.
That's what I would anticipate. Now it's as great a time as any to get started, unless you're wanting a destruction army or stormcast, and then I would wait until the summer.
Yeah, and you can still like play with some other army if you can get your hands on like a cheap
Yeah.
army or an inherited army from somebody. Then you can learn. But yes, if you want like Stormcast or Destruction, chances are there will be a new force for those. So
And not only that, like it will be affordable because it'll be bundled up and it'll be an awesome deal because they always are.
yep,
So this summer will be like I would just start saving your pennies, and then the other half of it is that it, like most of the older stuff, they will often like decrease their power level.
sure,
So like the current Stormcast will probably not be as good as the new Stormcast.
yeah. And to answer Andrew Fairbanks in the chat, no, I do not think they'll kill the double turn. I never in a million years. As long as AOS exists, I believe it'll have the double turn potential. The priority roll would be the correct way to say it. So
What? Let me ask this: what if they do kill it?
what are you I believe there's a 10,000 to 1 odds. Too many designers have talked too many times openly on podcasts about how much they see it as an integral part of the game.
Okay,
Like that's just. I mean, they've been very transparent about this.
it's true.
So like, it's just.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the double turn. I know a lot of
Yes.
people don't. I do.
Yeah, priority's great. I do hope we continue to explore ways to mess around with it. Right? Like, there's other things you could do, and so that'd be fine. That's cool. Like we could play with incentives, like we did with AOS 2, with the whole endless spells getting to move if you have the priority, right? Like they could play around with stuff like that. So there you go.
Yeah, I'd be down with that.
Okay. Anyways, so finally, we come to the end of the news. Holy Moses, what a news section. I knew it was going to be a big one tonight, and it was a big one. All right.
Sorry,
let's get into it. It's all right. Tom, let's talk pick of the week. What do you want to share with everybody?
Man, there's been just some great content this week. I'm gonna first go with Heywo Twitch, friend of the show. He did a wonderful 4 or 5 days ago. Did a wonderful like, hey, do you want to know all about Doc? Super well timed with the Doc book releasing, obviously, and it is, as always, an enjoyable listen. A very straightforward kind of take on what Doc is and what the heart of that army is. So I would, if Daughters of Cain interests you at all, I would highly encourage you all to check out the video.
Nice. A couple shout outs for myself. So first off, Martin Orlando, good friend of the show, all around awesome person. Good painter, previously Stormcast, and now good painter, Lumineth man. He is running the AOS tournament at the Atlantic City Open, June 11th through the 13th at Harrah's in Atlantic City, Jersey. So if you're looking to get back in the hot tournament action, as we're coming out of this long hibernation we've been in, and you're on the East Coast, that could be a great way to do it. So do check that out. Atlantic City Open. I'll grab the link and throw it down there. I also, in this pick of the week section, I have a special request for everybody. Today, our good buddy, our hero, our pal, our friend, our love, Doom and Darkness. He said, hey guys, I'm taking a step away from AOS. Got a lot of other stuff going on in his life. He's had a busy personal life. A lot of stuff happening. And he just hasn't been able to put his whole head in the game recently. And I get that. And content making is often time consuming and troubling. So, Doom and Darkness is going to step away from AOS for a while and focus on other stuff. Which is perfectly fine. But here's what I want everybody to do. I want everybody, if you know Doom and Darkness, and I'll link to the most recent video he made, great battle report. I'm going to link out to his most recent battle report. I want you all to go to that video. I want you all to like that video. And I want you to leave a comment for Doom that says something along the lines of, "We'll be here waiting for you when you come back." Don't pressure him to come back. Don't say anything else. Don't be like, "Don't leave." Don't do that. Man's doing a good thing for his personal life. Sometimes you got to take a step away and get your head straight. I respect that. But I do want him to know that when he's ready, we'll be here for him. So leave him a message on his channel. Tell him how much you enjoyed his content, and tell him you'll be right there waiting for him when he comes back. Because I'm sure he'll be back. He loves it too much. I know what'll bring him back. I know what'll bring him back. And I know when we'll see Doom. But that's okay. So, leave him a message like that. Make his day. And then make him understand how much we all value him as a content creator. One of my personal heroes. One of my favorite people. And honestly, a good friend. He and Coach both took such great care of me when I was in Australia. Literally, all the way around the world. And so, I am eternally grateful to both of them. Okay. Now, with that said, let's talk about some hobby time. Okay. Hobby time. Tom, you've been hobbying. What are you doing? What are you working on there, man?
I am putting together some ghosts.
Spooky ghosts. What are you doing with your spooky ghosts, Tom? Spoopies.
Just exploring some ideas. So, trying to get back into the hobby mojo. Like I'm in the pre-edition funk, because I know a new edition is coming. And as you know, anytime we're in this like seasonal transition, the end of the season, like especially at the end of like an edition change, like all of my hobby energy is gone. And with this like being the whole year of COVID and stuff like that, I've just really struggled to like work on things. And so I've done a lot of building recently, but I haven't done as much painting. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna maybe try to get a little bit farther on my Night Haunt. So I suspect that we may see Night Haunt in a forthcoming Broken Realms. So there's hope that, there may be more toys to play with because we saw that character, right?
Yep.
And so I'm hoping that we'll see it in Be'lakor, right? So maybe in a month we might have an update to Night Haunt, which might make them a little bit more playable. And moving forward to the new edition, kind of prep them for what is to come. So we'll see.
Right on. I'd bet on them. Like, it'd be too easy for them to just bolt on sub-factions. They love doing crap like that, as Wrath of the Everchosen showed. So, that's just blue ocean design that they love to do. It's been a rough hobby week for me. I'm not gonna lie. So everybody understands. I've been fighting through, like, a problem where my back was injured pretty bad, and now it's in my arm. And so my right arm has been in, like, extreme pain, especially if it's in this forward position. Which would be the position you do to be painting. So I've still been trying to paint and record stuff through like extreme pain, but I managed to get a fair amount done. I did manage to finish up my Slickblade Seeker unit, so they're all good and ready to go. There's one of them right there.
Looks like a nightmare to put together.
It is. I managed to get the Shard Speaker assembled. She'll be a project coming up here pretty soon. And right now I'm working... I needed something a little lower impact, so I'm working on this big piece of terrain thing. Just a little mountain thing. I needed something that wasn't quite as intense while I rest my arm, so I had to do something that isn't that. Because, I mean, like, we're talking nerve pain here, by the by, not muscle pain. So it's real fun. I really love it, especially the fact that, like, normal painkillers do nothing for it, so... It's great. It's great. So it's been a lot of fun. Anyways, but we soldier on. We soldier on. We must keep painting.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, indeed. I'm sure we all heard it. So I saw my wife say she's going to try to sneak dogs into the office.
Yep. And I heard the woof. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're coming.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, there they are.
Yep.
She won't look at you.
No. Hey.
Lyra. Hey.
Nope, she's not gonna look over. Oh, there you go. There you go.
Oh.
Hit like and subscribe.
There you go. Yes. The other one's very jealous.
Yeah, she's mad.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, dear.
My dogs are in bed.
I'll try that, Nick. That's good advice. Yeah, the problem is it's not. Yeah, it's weird. We don't need to get into my pain. It's not muscle inflammation. Like I have still been working out, and that hasn't, like, the muscles, that kind of stuff isn't what's hurt. It's actually like I injured the nerve somehow. So good times. Anyways, cool. All right, so Doggo Break.
Cool.
There you go.
Yep.
We'll mark the Doggo Break, because I'm sure that'll be fun. Doggo Break. Okay, I've got that in my timestamps. All right, so Tom, let's talk about design, man, shall we?
Sure.
Let's talk about good design. What does that even mean? What are we even talking about? Can we bring up a new graphic? Yes, we can. Okay.
Do we have a PowerPoint?
No, I don't have a PowerPoint, but I do have images. I have some images.
You're letting me down.
I'm sorry, Tom. I used PowerPoint to make the images. How about that? They just fit better, and it doesn't cover our face. I made a PowerPoint and then saved it into images.
Classy.
So we start with I brought up first this design axis, right?
Yep.
And part of what I want to, and I'll make this a little bigger so people can see it. Yeah, there we go. It's about as big as it's going to get. Okay, so part of the problem is, and I saw this on, I saw this as soon as the Sun Metal thing came up, right?
Yep.
And don't worry, I do stretch before push-ups to answer Brent's question. At any rate, as soon as it came up, everybody was immediately having a power argument. It's like the only thing we know how to talk about. Oh, this is broken. Oh, this is OP. This is too weak. It's like we talk about this one axis as though it's like the only thing in the world.
Right.
Right?
Well, I don't think people have language to talk about the other axis.
Right. I think that's true. Because it's the easy one we all feel. But when I introduced this quadrant idea originally, the reason I did it is because I thought there just simply is something else going on here, right?
Right.
I first felt it with the KO book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's where it really hit me and occurred to me. Because I had problems with the KO book, and a lot of it wasn't that I didn't think the army could compete, right?
Right.
If you go back to those episodes, my pushback, I said, no, I think the army's okay, competitively. But I'm bothered by these design elements, these things in the book, right?
Right.
But
it was so difficult to read the book.
Right. But I didn't even really piece together. I didn't have the ideas, the language formally structured in my head yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
the more we've seen it, the more it's been it's becoming more obvious what's going on.
Yes. Yes. The design is totally separate from power. You can have a well-designed trash book. So I'm gonna make two arguments here about design. When it comes to this chart, the design of a tome is completely independent from the war scrolls in it. A controversial statement, to be sure. And what I mean by good design is that the book is easy to read, inspires lists and armies, creates a natural flow, both linear and modular. And we'll spend the rest of the show unpacking all of what I mean by that, right? And again, I'm sure people will argue over the exact placement of some of my books on this. That's fine.
Do you have that that definition should be like the caption underneath, like that's your thesis.
It's written up here. Yeah, it's written up here in the corner. I put it up here.
Okay. It's just really tiny.
It is at the moment. I didn't think about that when I saved this picture. Right? And so like design to me isn't, well, and Brian S., that's not even what I mean. Yes, it is internal to the book, but it's not a measure of power at all. Like, can I take Unit A and is it doing something better than Unit B? Like, that's the War Scrolls. What a book is, okay, here's what I mean. Why are War Scrolls separate? War Scrolls are separate from the book because I don't need the book to use the War Scrolls. We didn't have books for most armies for the majority of the history of this game.
Right.
We only had the War Scrolls and then like maybe some rules sometimes and maybe not. Right?
Books marry War Scrolls together into a union, a cohesive unit, and they produce battalions.
Right.
Okay? So follow me down this metaphor, but battalions are the product of the allegiance that's been created there. Mm-hmm. Okay? And all of that should flow from the moment you enter the allegiance and begin reading the rules, who then subdivide into subfactions, and then produce battalions that either span subfactions or are limited to subfactions.
Right.
But all that design is cohesive and should flow into the different topics and the different elements. So like decisions that you're making in subfactions should point you towards battalions. They should point you towards decisions on how to play the army.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Agreed.
That's good design.
Good design should feel like when let me unpack these all very quickly in turn. Okay.
Sure.
And I saw somebody say like anything like, Brian S. Right, interactions, fun, unique abilities, synergies, alignment with background. Yeah, that's fine. As long as we're talking about the ability level, battalions, things like that, then yes, I agree with your statement. Bad design violates, say, Thomas, speaking rules, 20 words or less. Nice. And somebody said, if it takes this much to explain, it probably shouldn't fit on a chart. And I think I'm trying to unpack this because I'm trying to teach a new language here, partially, right? Yep. Of like how to think and talk about this. And I really do believe we're so addicted to talking about power that it's very hard for us to divorce that from our thought when we think about this.
Right.
Right. Because we so indelibly imprint the power experience with the book on like any other, it casts a long shadow over any other concept we have, right? Okay. What does easy to read mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. When I read the book, it should actually not have super long, crazy abilities popping up where they don't need to be, overuse of complex rules where they don't need to happen, lots of references back and forth to other sections that make it complicated to even read, call-outs to rules that are outside the book, right? This is just basic stuff of, like, how to write a good book, a good game book.
Right.
So the KO book violates this like crazy because it says, like, you get a triumph. Well, what's a triumph? I don't know what a triumph is. Right? Why is triumph nowhere in this book explained? Okay? Like, that's a very corner case rule that we're just assuming I have access to. And, like, yes, I understand, but they don't tell you what to hit is. Yeah, okay. There's a certain level of basic rules we engage with that you assume everybody knows what they are, and there's a certain level of specialty rules that it behooves you to reprint them. Okay?
Right.
On a common in Magic, they don't explain what power and toughness means on every card, but when they have First Strike, they do put the whole text after it of what that means. There's a reason for that.
They don't do that anymore. But yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. And so there's a degree of complexity there that, like, there are entire games, there are entire tournaments that people will have certainly ever played. There may be entire years that you've played Warhammer and never utilized the garrison rules.
Right. Absolutely. Yes, exactly.
Those are real rules.
Yes. Garrisoning, another perfect thing where, like, they put those rules in there and said you can garrison stuff and then never bothered to explain how garrisoning works and then how garrisoning works differently with moved mobile objects on the table. Right.
And so garrisoning is an example that, like, that was never unpacked, and actually it created a bunch of complications and weird corner cases because of how it ended up interfacing, or not really well interfacing, with the way that the rules were written. Right. And that had to be cleaned up and clarified in the following FAQs.
Yeah, my other point about rules complexity is things that show up a lot in the game, your battle line units, stuff like that, when I say easy to read, those should be simpler units. We shouldn't be putting long, complicated, exception-based, high memory using rules on things that are going to form the bulk of most people's armies.
Battle line units should never have more than one rule. I'm gonna go out there and say that.
Like I could see two if they're like very, very straightforward. But yes,
one specialty ability is what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
like they can have like like a captain ability and a musician or whatever, but like one actual ability. Battle line units should be streamlined.
Which is why, again, to source back to Magic, commons tend to do not have the overtly complex rules interactions that like mythic rares or planeswalkers or stuff like that do, because they shuffle and push the high complexity into the less encountered cards theoretically, so that people who are playing limited or draft or doing something like that or whatever are newer aren't running into that left and right. Obviously, in some kind of constructed, you're gonna have a deck full of complex cards theoretically, but still.
Right.
So, like, that's what I mean when I say easy to read. When I say inspires lists and armies, I mean you should read through it and think, this sounds like it's doing a cool thing. It's exploring a facet. It's opening up the army. It's using the war scrolls in an interesting way. It's making me want to own this army because of something I read there. I'm sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Right. No, like, you read it and you go, I want to do that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And Chris Thiel said, so you're telling me pink horrors are bad? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. They absolutely failed the design test. Now, one of the things about this is, like, there is sway here, right? These aren't rules as much as they're more guidelines. Right, yeah. Like, obviously you can bend and break some of these rules, right? Not to Morpheus from the Matrix, too bad.
And some of them should be bent and broken.
Right. But it's like doing it right is the art of good game design, right? You adhere to the guidelines as much as possible and break it when it's the whole product is going to become stronger because you did.
Right.
Right. Maybe
you
pinkies
should feel
are a good exception for that. Maybe they're not. I don't know.
Yeah, like you should feel like breaking design, like your principles, should be like it should be meaningful.
Right. And when I
should say something about what those things are.
Right. When I say it should make you want to play the thing, let me give you a real example. Okay? Let's make this real, Tom. All right? And oh, by the way, and we'll talk about linear and modular a little while later. Okay, here I've got two things. You ready? Here are my two examples, Tom, of stuff that I think passes this sniff test. I'm interested for your feedback. These are the Tempest Eye battle traits and the Kabbalist battle traits from Slaves to Darkness. Okay?
Right.
I think both of these subfactions pass the smell test of what I was describing. When I read Tempest Eye, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Let's see. So we're real fast and we get cool save rolls the first round because we're on this big mountain. We get to run quicker. Okay, I got this command ability that lets me then run and shoot. Oh, and I can have Caradron Overlords units in my army too, right? Like, instantly, you get it. You get what Tempest Eye is about.
Because those additions are doing the things that all the rest of the things are doing. Right.
It's saying movement, running, right? Getting some KO in there. Another skirmishy, shooty type of thing, right? The run and shoot. Like, everything about the Force is efficiently communicated through these rules.
Right.
Right? Kabbalists is the same way for me. You look at this and it's like, okay, you've got a wizard, you can pick, and they can do this ritual that either, like, gives you a big bonus to spellcasting for all your wizards by icing people, which is very chaosy, right? Or you can move endless spells around and manipulate them, right? And you all get a cool bonus spell that does damage and saps movement. Okay, fantastic. Get it? This is the caster one. So if I like wizards and I want to do, like, a wizard circle in chaos, this is where I go for my Slaves to Darkness, right? Both of these communicated stuff that would make me want to build a list, right? If what in my head is cool with chaos is like chaos magic and stuff like that, right? If that's what I enjoy, that's what I think is cool. Then as soon as I read Cabalists, I'm like, oh, I'm home. This is my thing. This is my jam. I like cool Chaos Sorcerer Lords and Sorcerer Lords on Mana Cores and, whatever, right? Whatever. So this is where I live, right?
Yep.
It communicates that efficiently. Like, a lot of the Cities of Sigmar do this. A lot of the Slaves of Darkness do this, because these are both standout books, right, for this reason. I just saw your comment, Tom. Yes, I am a monster. Behold. There's a whole bunch of beta crap like that in there. Dark Rituals in there too, Tom.
That's a $300 common.
I don't know what to tell you.
I just pointed that out.
Now.
It is safe right now. You're right. You are out of your mind. Continue.
Yeah. So, at any rate, I think to me, this is like, when you talk about inspiring lists, and by the way, I could have picked like 20 other things from across these books, right?
Right.
But there's nothing necessarily like linear or modular about either of these two. That's why I picked them, right? Because you don't need it, but like, yes, use wizards, but like, okay, not all your people are wizards, right? So it's weakly linear. Yeah. Tempest Eye, it's like very open actually, because it's what do you want to run and shoot?
Yep.
People play Tempest Eye like I do with a ton of shooting units that just like skirmish around, but people also play Tempest Eye with like just the all dwarf army, right? It's an incredibly versatile city that can lead to a bunch of lists. That's why it's so good and inspiring. You see everything from like I'm doing with like some KO included shooty city, more like empire-y type troops. Combined with all the way to like all dwarven stuff to like elven stuff. Like it's all over the shop because it's a great inspiring thing, right? Yeah. Is there any book that stands out to you, Tom, that you think really passes this muster? Of like, just by reading it, it inspires you to want to play stuff. It gives you ideas for lists. Before you ever looked at a War Scroll, you kind of knew what list you wanted to run.
Flesh Eater Courts did that.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like, because each of the sub-factions, as I dug through, I'm like, okay, these guys like piling in and eating things, right? And then as I went into sub-factions, I was like, oh, this is the monster one. Oh, this is the massive, like, army troop ghoul one, right? Yeah, like, it just fits. Like, as you flip through, and you're like, oh, this is the battalion that does this thing. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
So for me, FEC was one of, just like looking at my bookshelf, FEC was one of them that just really jumped out. I think to some degree, I think Daughters of Cain does this as well.
I think Doc does this really well, especially with the sub-factions. I think Seraphon does this quite well. They're a little more hard linear in how they do it. And by the way, there's nothing innately good about linear design or modular design, but you do need both of them. They both have values. They have upsides and downsides. We'll talk about them later on. Because this is another concept in game design that I feel like it's really important for people to understand what that means. But again, there's nothing innately good that you want either of those. I think Seraphon passes that test. I think, like I said, I agree with you on FEC. I think the Auric War Clans largely pass the sniff test.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
Yep. I would agree with that.
Like, you get inspired to make lists in that book just by reading any part of that book. You can flip to anything and you're like, I want to build this out of this. Right? It's incredibly successful at that.
Like, it feels right when you build those lists.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some that don't feel right.
Yeah, man. Let's do that. Like, what is bad? What does bad design look like?
I think Stormcast Eternals fits in this.
Okay.
Because so much of the book has been, like, generationally, like, aligned. So you can actually see, like, the generational markers in the book. This is first generation Stormcast.
Sure.
This is second generation Stormcast.
Yeah.
This is third. And there's only a couple points where they cross over. And the sub factions, the storm host, haven't actually married the that gap.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, it hasn't actually bridged the generational divides amongst those books. And so, like, you have, like, each generation with all of their battalions associated with, which are internally just awkward and bad and just not cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not what you want to actually do to build.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that a lot of the battalion problems that Stormcast have actually are the generational problem.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so I picked two options here, both at a macro level and then a minimal level of bad design. We can come back to the Mega Gargant later, because he's more of a specific example. But Barak Urbaz, like, bad design to me, I look at this and I'm like, okay, do not subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic of a Barak Urbaz unit that spends a share of Aether Gold. Well, first of all, that's a crappy rule, because all you're doing is making me not suffer the punishment for an already badly written rule. Right?
Yeah, you're backing out penalties.
You're backing out penalties, which always feels worse. That's number 1. Right? Number 2, then the code. You can reroll battle shock tests while they're wholly within opponent's territory. Like, okay, I guess, sure.
Which is like a marginal ability.
Marginal benefit that it then has a limiter on it.
Yeah, and most of the time, it's not ever actually going to come into play, ever.
Right.
Always because, like, because the main battalion actually makes all of your guys that are going to need to be battle shock immune. Or you just have an admiral who does it passively.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's a non-bow and a ridiculously limited, pointless rule that has a trigger, and you'll probably forget about.
Yep.
That will rarely come up. The amendment is pick up to D3 different friendly Barak Urbaz units. They start the battle with 1 share of Aether Gold in addition to any they normally receive. Okay. Fine enough. Like, it's weird that it's random, but it's fine. Right? And then the footnote, once per battle, at the end of any combat phase, 1 friendly Skyfarers unit that fought in that phase gains 1 share of Aether Gold. Welcome to Forgetting Town, population U, that you had this rule. Like, ridiculous. Once per battle, at a certain point, 1 friendly unit of a certain type gains a nominal benefit. Fantastic. No, airships do not roll battle shock tests, because they're single models. So that's nonsense. Chemist Supreme, replacing the ability on a War Scroll. Fantastic. So now I can't even read my War Scroll anymore to actually know what it does.
Now, I mean, all the new one does is just lets you choose 2 targets, but continue.
Like, it
just modifies it, but they've replaced it.
But it also, I agree. But it also modifies it in a way that's actually really hard to fulfill, because now I've got to have this idiot within 2 units, wholly within 12 inches of 2 units. Like, so it's harder.
It's not giving you anything new. It's just letting you do something you could already do more.
I understand. I'm just saying actually utilizing it, feeling like you're getting the most out of it, is hard.
I understand.
That's all I'm saying.
I understand. Yep.
And then the great Endrin work, you get a free Endrin work that's, like, pretty bad. So
yeah, and pretty bad doing something you don't normally really want to do, which is to have your ship jam down somebody's throat.
Yes, egregiously close. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And it fires off in a phase that, like, you're not going to be doing that in.
Right. So to be clear, what I don't like about this is that you have a lot of, like, duplicative, feel bad stuff that is also limited in weird ways, right? Where it's like, I get this rather weak benefit that's easy to forget that rarely happens, right? I get this neat bonus that I'm going to forget to trigger because it's incredibly cached and limited to 1 unit, right? It's like, you can do X, but only when Y, and on Z, if then Q. Right. Whenever rules start getting written in that kind of a cadence, right, that's problematic. When you get non-bows, like you mentioned, with, like, oh, you can reroll battle shocks, but why would you? There's 50 different ways you're going to be already immune to battle shock, right? You can reroll 1s out of this thing, but there's probably 10 other ways you have to reroll 1s to hit, right? Well,
it just tells me that they are, like, the rules are written in, like, seclusion from how the army actually plays.
Right.
Like, that's what that strikes me as when I read that. is that the rules aren't aware of how the army itself plays.
Yeah.
And if they were aware, why would they have ever written this rule?
Right. Right. Yeah. So, like, it's just an example. I'm not trying to rip on KO here, but I think it is one of the... It's a very, like...
It's a poignant example of something that is perpetual throughout that book.
Right. I just think the design of KO is so lacking. Right? And it's not a statement on their competitiveness. Again, separate axis. KO is a very competitive army.
Right.
It's also not necessarily even a statement on fun. Right? That's a whole different axis I didn't put in there. But, like, I think many people probably enjoy playing their KO army. Right? So, yeah, like, I think other armies that fall into this trap of, like, not having this sort of intuitive, inspiring design are, like, obviously the original Legions of Nagash, which is just like a bring in your death, you know, let's just get all the death in here we can. Like, there's no real things in there that are that inspiring. The rules are very flat. The things it's doing is very flat, right? Because it's too broad, right? If you would have written Legions of Nagash like you wrote Cities of Sigmar, man, that could have been amazing, right? You could take all that stuff and write a really interesting book. Right?
Yep.
I think the new Slaanesh is an absolute just travesty of poorly written rules, of bad design.
Well, it got KO'd.
Yeah. It's all of these exceptions and non-bows and, like, you jump through, like, 10 hoops to get a minor benefit for no reason, right? That's the kind of stuff.
Let's stay on target. We're table setting right now.
Yes.
Because what we're doing is we're establishing examples of these things.
Yeah. I think those are I think the examples, right?
Yep. But you wanted to talk about Gargants?
Yeah, so this is just a little minor example of what I think is, like, bad design in this way when I talk about things that inspire. Now, this is on a War Scroll. Because remember, not all design happens at the book level, right? Like, that's what catapulted us
in general, we've been talking about book level. So you just need to, like, recognize that if you start using examples from War Scrolls, that's going to be problematic for some.
Yes, I understand. So design, I just see them as two separate things, right? Like, my point being is that when you're talking about good design,
you're saying
bad design.
War Scrolls get designed, and then army books get designed, like Allegiances get
Correct.
designed.
Yeah. You have your War Scrolls. They're their own thing. I could throw all the books I own in the bin and still play Warhammer Age of Sigmar for the rest of time. Just using the scrolls. Right? I don't need the books. The books are not a necessary thing to play this game. Period. Right? The game functions fully fine without the books. Hence, the books are separate from the scrolls. The scrolls are the necessary component of the game. The books are not. So the books have an onus on them to do something interesting. But with the scrolls, scroll design is also important, right? Like, just because they're not in the good design of a book doesn't mean that good design on scrolls doesn't matter. It matters a heck of a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think the number one problem we have in the game right now, if I had to put my finger on it, is we've got too many badly designed scrolls.
And then you're trying to spin gold out of, scrolls that are problematic.
Yeah, it ends up being an anchor for the book, because now the rules of the book are showing up trying to, like, do something interesting, as you just said, and you're trying to turn lead into gold, right? You need some kind of alchemy stone, philosopher's stone, sorcerer's stone, whatever we want to call it. Whatever country you happen to be in. Whatever adventure Harry Potter's going on today. Right?
Indeed.
So, to me, here's this easy example that broadens out. Okay. One of the things that AoS does well in its design is that most things tend to feel really good, because AoS uses a lot of what we call top-down design.
Yep.
Okay. I don't want to get down a huge tangent here, so I will explain this quickly. Top-down design is when you start from a single concept of the thing. I show you the model of a big giant, and I say, write me the rules for this thing. You have the top of the thing, the thing itself, that carries the rules. That's what you have with first. That's the top of the pyramid, right? It's the thing. And you write the rules based on how it looks, how it seems, how you think it'd play, you think it would exist in the world, and so on. That's top down. That's how most stuff in AoS is written.
you have the concept of something,
Right.
and then you develop rules for that thing.
Yes, you back into the rules from the concept. Okay.
Yes.
The other option is bottom-up design. Bottom-up design is when you start from the rules that you need and then build a shell around it. Example. This army really needs like a fast, mobile anvil. Doesn't hit hard, but we want it to be able to have like re-rolling saves and have a move of at least like 12 inches so it can get around and kind of hold people in place. Okay, what unit could we make to do that? Right? That would be bottom-up design. Everybody get the difference there?
Right.
Okay.
And so what they've done is they've created a rules shell, and then now they say, okay, design me some models that fit. We're going to say that these guys do this type of thing, and they would hypothetically you would develop like an artist's summary, right? That you would then like send out to have drawn and then models made from the concept of the rules construction.
Right. Most of the time, Warhammer is just, they simply are a top-down shop almost exclusively. Okay.
Yes.
Because the models live first, the model makers rule the day. They make models, they ship it over, and then say somebody write rules for this. Right.
Right. For those that are familiar with other game, game systems, stuff like that. For those that remember the tragedy of 4th edition D&D.
Yes.
An example of bottom-up design was how. Do you remember the Gen Con when I called them on this? Vince asked if they would be.
Yeah, we actually where we talked to designers. Yes.
Yeah, and one of the things that they did was that like briefly you had an archetype and then a bunch of like there were 4 different archetypes, and then all the subclasses.
Yeah.
4 different roles, and then all of the subclasses within any role. What I had noticed was there was a pattern of them borrowing from the other archetypes. So it's like mainly a fighter, then it borrows a little bit of cleric, or it's mainly a fighter, it borrows a wizard. And I asked, are you going to be filling in the rest of these boxes?
Yes, right. Because whenever you get into grid filling based on rules, you're doing bottom-up design.
Yes. Right. Where you're saying, we have this, we don't have anything that does this.
Right.
What would something like that look like? GW doesn't really do that as far as we can tell.
Sure.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay. So the important part about that is that because they tend to do top-down design, we often get rules that feel kind of like they fit the thing. Not always. And sometimes they certainly miss wide on power. Right? It might fit the thing but be way too weak. Yeah. Right? Or fit the thing and be way too strong.
Right.
LRL. Right? By the way, why are high elves over-designed / also often overpowered in every edition? Why? Why is Tzeentch almost always cheaty broken? Why?
Because they're the essence of what those things are those things.
Correct. Because they're a top-down design shop, and the dark side of top-down design is you tend to balance things poorly.
Right.
Because like that's because
your vision of that thing guides your rules writing.
Correct. And elves, their concept in Warhammer is they're just better than everybody. That's it. They're just better at everything. They're better fighters, they're better wizards, they're better archers, they're better than you.
Right.
Hence, they're better.
Right.
Right? Tzeentch's whole thing is cheating. That's literally their whole thing.
He knows the future. He knows the fates. He's a planner and a schemer. And so when you communicate that to rules, that lets you bend rules.
Right.
Because that's how
This isn't like, I saw, just to address Lazy Bum real quick here, he said because some lead designer GW favors them. It's not any one person. That's just it. It's a culture, not a person. Probably since I've started playing Warhammer, a dozen different designers have written high elf content. Or elf content like that. And in almost every single time, they end up being powerful and over-designed. it's because of the culture of doing only top-down design. Right?
Which is generally like the design principles we follow is top-down design.
It is, but that's why I also have a formal developer in you to then correct my excesses.
That's fair.
Like, that's the difference. Like, you can do it if you then compensate for it. Right?
Right.
Okay. So, anyways, again, I don't want to go down this road too far. So that's why we are so trained on this top-down design and on the rules fitting the thing that when something like the Mega Gargant comes out and he's got a club that is bigger than most models, right? Like it's this big, right? Most models are like it's bigger than most cav, nose to tail, okay?
Yep.
And it hits for 2 damage. And
Sorry.
like I've heard all your explanations. I've heard it all. I've heard all your nonsense about mathematical smoothing and all of that. Okay? I don't care. I don't care. Because you're the one who decided to train me that big things do big damage. Big monsters bite for like D6 or 5 or 4.
Dirthu's
sword hits for 6. Right?
Yep.
You're the one who trained me that this is how the world works. You can't just come in and go, oh, but not for these guys. And then say, I'm silly for calling out that difference.
Right.
Right? Like, no. You're the one that made the ground rules of how this world works. Okay? And then you decided to break it. And by the way, if you were worried about mathematical smoothness, then you've literally had this solved since the 4th edition Empire book where you could play Sigmar himself. And Sigmar could either make like big normal sweeping attacks or do one big mega smash for high damage. That was in the 4th edition Empire book. Okay? and a million monsters, like say, oh, I don't know, the Sword Masters we just looked at, have multiple modes of fighting between single attack and wide sweeps. I don't know why we forgot that technology existed. But anyways, so then you've got that. So let's look at the Titanic Boulder Club, 2 damage club. First of all, that's a problem. Second of all, this is the Horde clearing giant. That's what it seems to communicate, right? He's got this star on his number of attacks. He counts up the enemies within 3 inches. So yet again, we're doing that counting thing. Another one of these guys. So earlier, see aforementioned statement, and of like counting models and why that's already sus. Okay. And then you've got and then you're saying, okay, cool. Well, if I get close to a bunch of dudes, all the rules that say just count the models are just count the models. The steam gun, if you manage to wheel it up and you count the models, right? Then you get a bunch of models in the steam gun. It doesn't cap. You just get to do it. Nope. Notice this little arrow down here at the bottom for no reason. For no reason. Right? You can this caps at 10. Just does. Like, for no intuitive reason.
The Sword Masters probably don't cap.
No. So, this right here is a great example of how to badly design a War Scroll. Right? You set its damage too low, you make it all about clearing hordes, then you fail to actually do that job very well.
Yep.
Right? So, there we go. I knew you were going to trigger a D&D discussion in the comments, by the way, and I'm here for it. I'm watching it happen, by the way. It's great. I'm not getting sucked into it, but I'm interested. So continue.
It's fine.
Okay. So that's why I want to say bad design can happen at both the macro and micro level, right? The whole book or the individual scroll. Even an individual rule, right? There's lots of elements of this. And again, none of this stuff is a statement on power. Right?
Yep.
Hamza said, oh, I didn't even notice that line. I cheated in my last game. Hamza, I don't blame you for a minute. Not for a minute. Because that line shouldn't be there. Because
not
it's unintuitive.
Right.
It is a governor on this for no reason. Right? No, Scathe. I didn't say stop. I said I'm here for it. You're not like I love now the back of my brain is watching your D&D discussion and enjoying it. We could do a whole show. I mean, I do a podcast on role-playing games, so there you go. Okay. The rule isn't Sigmar, it's Magnus the Pious. That might be. Are you looking at the 5th edition book or the 4th edition book, Coach? Anyways, all right. So, Tom.
Yes.
Let's talk about linear versus modular design. Okay?
Okay.
What's linear design, Tom? You and I have talked about this a lot.
It is a set of incentive structures that push you towards, like, your first decision will often create a chain reaction that decides all of the decisions.
Mm-hmm. Or some
because
large
what
number of them.
Right. And because what it does is that the incentive structures of the actual options of the decision-making process all point in one direction. Yeah, I was going to use another D&D example, but I decided not to. So go ahead.
Go for it. Use a D&D example.
So feat structures in 3rd edition, 3.5 and Pathfinder.
Sure.
Feats were often linearly designed such that, like, when you chose one feat, it set you on a. When you took dodge, you were on a path.
Yeah, you're like, okay, here we go, whirlwind attack. Yeah, sure.
Right, there's trajectory now because of the decision that I've made.
How do I get to that trip master?
Right.
Yes.
Or what'll happen is yes, you look at the end and say, I want to do X. So then this is the only path that I can take to get to X.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so linear design is design that pushes you. What it does is, rather than giving you more options, it limits options and oftentimes artificially restricts options often in a soft way, where it'll say you can make other decisions, but it's almost always bad.
Okay. Why is it good? Like, what's good about linear design?
It makes for newer players, it's really helpful because it helps point players in a direction of saying, hey, these two things will work well together.
Yeah.
And so you do want some linear design because you want to create a series of breadcrumbs from a design standpoint to help people see the good, like the things that go together, the things that grok, the things that fit. Like, yes, I want dodge, but like I actually want to be able to also do this mobility thing and have bonuses to my AC when I move. Again, I'm using D&D examples. Sure. And those are like, I want to be a mobile, nimbly type of guy. These are things that do that thing. And so they point that direction, which can be good. So you need to have some linear design, but everything doesn't need to be World of Warcraft, SWTOR skill trees.
Yeah.
Like MMO skill trees are a perfect example of linear design.
Absolutely.
You are punished for doing something that isn't advancing one step forward in your Diablo skill tree or your weapon tree or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. You know, when we think about this in Warhammer, there's lots of examples of linear design scattered throughout the game, and it's fine. Yes, as Dose Green said, like they usually are built around keywords, though.
Yep.
Though not always, but often, yes, that is usually the tool of the design language that AoS usually utilizes to push linear design.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. Keywords are normally the design language of AoS.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. There are some exceptions, but it doesn't matter. Yes, it's a common thing. And so, like, let's walk through an example here of like of what to me is like linear design doing its best work, right?
Sure.
Which is in the Seraphon book, which I think has some exemplary linear design. So you look, let's say you come to the Seraphon book and you're like, that wasn't a brand new book, so people had preconceived notions. You come to it like, I am a big fan of Saurus. I love Saurus. I think Saurus are the coolest. Okay? So, all right. So when I read the book, I want to know what do my Saurus boys get, right? I know what my Saurus scroll looks like because I've played with that since all the time I didn't have a book. What am I going to get from my sweet lizard bros? Okay. And so I look into the rules, and right here I see the coalesced, and I see predatory fighters. Add 1 to the attack's characteristic of Jaws weapons used by coalesced units. Okay, cool. All right. Neat. My bites on my Saurus will get a bonus attack. Okay, that's cool. I like that. That's neat. There's some other things in here as well that I might find neat, but I'm like, okay, I've seized on a thing. Saurus have a jaw attack. Skinky Doos don't. Got it. Okay, this is good for my Saurus. Right?
And I want to make my jaw attack pop.
Right, exactly. So then I'm like,
because
okay.
that's their strength.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I keep reading, right? And I look at Coatl's Claw, the sub-faction, right?
Yep.
And I see, okay, cool. Oh, neat. Okay, I can add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by my Coatl's Claw Sauruses that made a charge move. And then the command abilities just count as though you're charging, right? I'm like, okay, cool. So my jaw and any other attacks I have hit better. All right, that's a good thing. I like where that's going. So now I get 1 more attack, and I can get +1 to hit on both. Okay, that's sweet, right? And then I get to the Sunclaw Temple Host, the battalion, and I see Ferocity Unbound for my Saurus Warriors, right? Where improve the rend characteristic of my Jaws weapons from used by this unit, improve the rend by 1 of my bite attacks, right?
Yep.
Cool. Now I've got 1 more attack, hitting on better, that also is getting a +1 to rend. Awesome. Right? Like, that's very linear design, right? It's super linear, right? But every one of them incentivized me to, like, take more Saurus, because I continue to have ways to invest in Saurus, right?
Right.
If it was just
now,
the top thing, I might mix in other stuff that also have jaw attacks. But then when I look at Quaddles and the Saurus specifically, and the battalion is Saurus specifically, it's like, it's building.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. And that's going to incentivize a list that's basically all Saurus. Like, all the way down. It's Saurus all the way down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's very linear.
Right.
And there are limitations to that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, what are the dark sides to linear design? We've already really touched on some, but to put a pin on it, Tom, what do you think?
It's limiting decision making.
Right.
By creating soft incentives the other way that functionally become hard incentives.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Where I can make other decisions, but they're just patently worse in every manner.
Right.
And oftentimes, from like a game, like a play standpoint, it will limit how you can play the game.
Yeah. Yep. I would also add in a game like Warhammer. It makes it actually difficult to balance units if you over linear design, right?
Right.
Because suddenly, like, you have to point those things as though they're like getting their maximal benefit.
They're popping off, right?
But
even if they're not in that thing.
Right, but that's not always the situation they find themselves in, right?
Right.
And so, like, suddenly the performance capability of this thing varies wildly based on which particular situation it's in, right? Like, a Saurus...
And then that thing...
Go ahead.
I'd say, then that thing will only show up in those corner case skews.
Right. Yes.
Because it'll only be worth its points when that's the only thing you're doing.
Right. Right. Exactly. It's a real dark side, right? Because a Saurus in a, like, Starborn, none of these things present is just like it's just terrible. It does nothing.
It's just a body.
It's just a body. It's awful. You wouldn't use it.
Right. And not even as good of a body as like a skink body.
Right. Right. The cheaper skink is literally better, right?
Right.
But that's not how they're pointed, right?
And they're pointed that way because the design created these situations where they need to be pointed according to the most optimal instance of their usage, right? Not they're like how the majority of usages are going to occur.
Right. So the dark side of it is that, yes, also, which I do agree with Dose Green, sometimes it can just be kind of boring if you overuse it, right? Because you feel like your lists are just getting made for you, right? If you have like a one drop or, near all of an army in a battalion full of all the units that are obviously getting benefits from the stuff you're doing, from the sub faction you take in your generic rules, a change host like situation, right?
I mean, Smashbat is kind of like this.
In Eternal Conflag, right? Yeah, I mean, Smashbat's an interesting case because you really it's this weird Johnny-ish linear design that sort of builds a bunch of crazy stuff out. Yes, you have to
but everything, all your decision points are made for you because you're building your army around Smashbat.
Sure.
Then what that means is that everything has to flow into Smashbat's smash effectiveness.
Right. Totally agree.
So this is why you grab the Arch Regent. This is why you grab the Regent. This is why you, and then you take the battalion, so you get a second Smashbat, like a minor Smashbat. And the battalion, you only taken it, and you've only taken the units that are in the battalion to let the Smashbat move extra.
Right.
So what you're like actually doing is all that's pre-decided for you. The units that you have are basically like you only take a double-sized unit of like flares because you have the points.
Right.
Like, but you're otherwise just filling out minimum requirements for the Smashbat list.
I agree. And so like
not to poop on your Smashbat, but
no, not
like
at
it's
all.
an example. But it's an example of linear design.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, so to me, like, linear design is a critical part of the game that should be there, right? Because it does provide a roadmap, it does provide inspiration, it does provide cool stuff. Like, look, when I started playing Magic back in the 90s, one of the first things I had was a white weenie deck, right?
Yeah, you did.
Because it was awesome. Because you'd have, like, Tundra Wolves and White Knights
Crusade
and
Jihad.
Crusade, yeah, exactly. And you'd buff them all up, and suddenly your pikemen, because I mean at that time there wasn't a lot of really great options, so like I was even using pikemen, right?
You banned your pikemen with your Tundra Wolves coming swinging hot.
When you were rolling around with like 5/4 pikemen first striking, you were like, oh man, this is awesome, right? But it's a very linear list. Yeah. Right? Because it just said, like, you want as many things to benefit from this +1/+1 as you can. Hence, take more little tiny wieners that you can, little tiny creatures that you can just get out there real fast, right? Like, there it is, right? So, never used Savannah Lions ever in that deck because Savannah Lions did not have First Strike, and First Strike is how you win, or how you won at my tables in 1994. So
and how I still win in Arena. Sure. White weenies forever, baby.
Yeah, First Strike is good. Anyways, so the point is, like, it grabs people, right? Like, the reason that deck and goblins and slivers and all of those tribal decks were so compelling that they would build whole sets around that stuff, right, in Magic. The reason that people do like those skill trees in MMOs, right? Like, it does grab us, right? There's
because
something
it communicates something
about
about the identity of those things.
Right. Yes. And so, like, there's a reason to have it in your book. The problem is it can go too far, right? Where it starts designing your entire list for you. Right. Where it starts reducing your creativity, where it starts making it impossible to point things correctly outside of, like, their optimal build, because it will then reduce the number of viable builds down to only those particular exact things.
Right.
So,
and arguably, this is what we have with KO. Like, I would argue that a lot of what happened with Zilfin, at least early on in KO's history, was this.
Sure.
So, obviously, there's a lot more diversity in a lot of lists now.
Sure.
But previously, like, there wasn't. And part of the reason was because of how design worked.
Right. Yep. So let's talk about the opposite of that. If that's the headache, then how do we get the cure? How do you how do you cure the hangover of too much linear design? That is modular design, right? And modular design is the opposite of it. Modular design says this thing is interesting in and of itself, right?
Yep.
And it has function and value without needing any synergies or linear pushes into any other place because it is functional on its own. It fills a role well, does a thing well, right? And it has a home in there. Okay?
Right.
And
This go ahead.
yeah, as you say. And this is actually something I think Age of Sigmar doesn't do enough of. That's what I'll say. I think we have too much linear design and not enough modular design. It was actually hard for me to find a bunch of good examples of modular design. Like, I found these two. But as I was thinking about this of what I wanted to pick, I made a list first before I picked these two. And it wasn't a big list.
Right.
Because ultimately, this is a game built on synergy. And that's why when you've got Gloomspite Gits that have to play, like, synergy bingo in really bad ways, right? When you've got books like Slanesh that just have no synergies, like they forgot to write them, right?
Yep.
It suddenly becomes challenging, right? Because other people are over here like, I've got 52 synergies to make my 100-point unit kill 500-point units. And you're like, I don't. I've just got a 100-point unit, man. That's all I got.
Doc.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Doc Goose. So my two examples of great modular design are Bellicor and the Light of Eltharion. Tom, why is modular design good?
Modular design is good because what it says is that you can, like on one hand, you can play what you like.
Right. Sure.
Because everything stands on its own.
Yep.
Everything is worth taking of its own merit and of its own right. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't need to stand on the shoulders of some other ability or unit or battalion in order to actually function. And so it is often an independent piece kind of itself. Or it has like some minor dependencies, right?
Right.
So like when we talk about like power pairs are an example of this.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. I would also say what's good about it is it encourages discovery. Right? Yeah. Because you're absolutely right. It allows for kind of this sort of, you can slot it in anywhere you want. You can build your list in a lot of ways you want. But it also encourages these unique discoveries of actual interactions more in play than in rules, if that makes sense. Like, this model is good to pin the unit with while I then hit it with my hammer until I'm ready to hit it with my hammer.
A great example of this, by the way, is Daughters of Cain, Sisters of Slaughter.
Sure.
As a chaffing unit, like it wasn't until we played teams and I watched you chaff for me.
Yeah, sure. That you saw the power.
Right, because like I wasn't gonna I was like, I'm not gonna invest points in those. I hate those girls. And they're junk on paper. And then you're like, oh, let me stand them up here. Okay, well, I'll charge, and then I'll pile in behind. And okay, now I've opened up the lane for you to charge.
Right, exactly.
And so there's nothing on those sheets that say, hey, these two work well together.
Yeah. And so somebody said, please explain power pairs. Power pairs are like soft linear design where like they work as a modular group, but there's no broader like great direction. So you've got like
Cities of Sigmar. I'll do an easy power pair.
Go for it.
Cities of Sigmar, the Rune Priest in Cities of Sigmar, or the Rune Lord, has an ability that increases. He has a prayer that increases Ren by 1.
Right.
On another dwarf, a Duerden unit, a dispossessed unit. Sorry.
Yes.
And so you pair him with like a unit of Iron Drakes to make them rend -2. And so like when you set them up on the table, you'll set the priest next to that that unit of Iron Drakes, and they're basically going to travel together the entire game.
Right.
They won't almost ever operate independently. Like, they're two independent units, but you're going to keep them together because there's synergy that's going on between them.
Right. But
and
notably, nothing about that was directly linear other than the dispossessed inclusion. I've also seen people use those with things like hammerers, right? To make a really potent melee unit, right? Or even like, iron breakers to actually make like an anvil that can hit back and do some damage, right? Like, the point is, it's versatile. It didn't say, like, nowhere on the Rune Lord does it say, combine with Iron Drakes for +1 rend to their shooting, right?
Right.
So, and they themselves are a nice little modular package that you can slot in, like 500 points, that you can just slot in to, like, any city's army. Right? That's why that little pair shows up in, like, everything from Living City to Tempest Eye to insert here. Right?
Yeah, Hag Queens and Witch Elves are another great power pair.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorites in KO is blanking on their name. Like your Sky Wardens, like shooty Sky Wardens, with a chemist. And so you're like getting re-rolls on this super shooty unit, and they just kind of run together and they travel around the table.
Right.
So
yeah, a good example of this, of like a power pair failing to function, would be like, oh, what I'd really want is the rerolls to hit from my Lord of Pain on my Slickblade Seekers in Slaanesh, right? Well, unfortunately, the Lord of Pain has a move of, like, not very fast, and the Slickblade Seekers have a move of 1,000,000. So, that's a challenge, right? So.
But so power pairs they are a shorthand way that Vince and I like to talk about unit divisions. Yes, like Hearthguard Berserker and like the hero that's going to run with them, for example. That, like, those are what we consider power pairs, and they're a great, like, they can be independent, but there's often soft inclusions that are going on there.
Yeah, exactly. So. Modular design, yes, Scathe said sorceress plus bleak swords. Yeah, 100%, right?
Perfect. Yep.
Like, modular design, what the nice part about it is because it's this softer set of incentives, it usually ends up, so it allows people to express their creativity a lot more, to be more, to build their list the way they want, to use the units they want to use, and to have interesting one-offs where they're not like, where they feel like they're playing a smoother game. Because it's easier to have one unit kind of just doing whatever it needs to do, or maybe a unit and a hero, rather than like, my entire army must operate in this linear Death Star, right? And move around in this sequencing of like 7 different aura buffs that it's trying to ping off on each other, right?
Like Night Haunt.
Sure. And, Be'lakor and Light of Eltharion are two interesting examples to me, because, Be'lakor is everybody's best friend, right? He's like he just shows up. You can stick him in
any army now.
Right now. This is going to change real soon, I suspect, by the way.
Right. Yes. He's not going to be this like extra utility guy, but like a main guy.
Yeah. But like right now, he just shows up. He has this, he has a good spell. He does good stuff. He's a double caster. And of course, he has this hugely potent game altering ability called Dark Master. Right.
But he doesn't synergize with anybody.
No.
He also doesn't synergize. Yeah, and so this is why this is not necessarily linear design. Because he doesn't like link up with anything.
Right.
He doesn't point you to anything.
Right.
He is an independent unit that does his own thing.
Right.
He is worthwhile, independent of no matter what else you're running, what else you're playing. And Light Eltharion's the same way.
Right.
That dude is a baller of his own right.
Yeah. He doesn't really need anybody else. Not much stuff interacts with him. He just kind of runs around and has a good time, right? And by the way, Dose Screen, yes, I do agree with you. Like, when we were talking about power pairs, we were saying they're kind of the bridge between linear and modular, right? Where you've got two units kind of acting in a modular sense. How linear they are often depends on how, like, those little synergistic things happen to be structured, right? But they tend to be the bridge. Yeah, so that's all we were saying. Yes, they're kind of the middle ground. Sometimes it can be very soft and you've got two very modular things that just happen to fit well together. Sometimes they can be quite hard. Depends on the army or the scroll. So the point is that like this is the thing I feel like we need, you know, more of. And to me, like when you sum all of this up, right?
Mm-hmm.
The books that stand out, okay, we're going to go back to my image here. The books that stand out to me as like the highest quality design. So like Cities, Slaves, Oryx, Seraphon, right?
Yep.
They use all of the tools in the toolbox that we've talked about, right?
Right.
Straightforward rules, easy to read, some use of linear, maybe too much linear in some case. I think Seraphon might be a little too much linear design, but you know, we can have that discussion. Like maybe it should come down a little because it's not, you know, because it is maybe like I could argue with myself on my own placements, but it's fine, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that they're like so. And when we're doing design work, one of the things that you always like to the drum you like to beat is designing at a 45-degree angle.
Correct. Yes.
And what that means for those of you that don't know is that you at every decision point you want the player or you want to incentivize them to both be looking like forward and upward.
Right.
Okay. In a sense, like, so you want them to say, for them to have a real decision to make of, do I do more linear building on what I'm doing, or is it advantageous for me to go nonlinear?
Yes. Correct.
And at every step of that ladder, so at the first decision point, second decision point, fourth decision point, 10th decision point, ideally, they need to look at it and go, is it more advantageous for me to go more linear or less linear at this stage? And there'd always to be a real decision to be made.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like that is sort of my mantra, right? Design at the 45-degree angle. Linear is a line that stretches out before you at 0 degrees, leading you down a path. Modular is just a stick straight up in the air. It's the point you're standing at with no direction it offers you, right? Where you want to be at is the 45-degree angle, where it's constantly pulling you equally in both directions.
Right, and there's real decisions to be made at each step.
Right.
And what I would argue is when you get into those books that are the best designed, what you find is that whenever decisions are being made by those armies, they're always pulling you in both directions.
Absolutely. And I think Cities and Slaves are like absolutely the perfect examples of this, right? Because when you look at something like Kabbalists, however you want to say it, right? Yep. It incentivizes some casters. Yeah. That's linear. That's pushing you in a weakly linear way, right? Okay, I want some wizards in here to take advantage of this. Right. But your army isn't made up of wizards, right?
No, it's not.
And so it gives you like a little bit of direction. You say, okay, and like what I found in I've played Kabbalists quite a lot, and I'm like, I tend to have about 3 wizards.
And if you skew into wizards, it's not going to be very good.
Right. It tends to be the worst choice, right? So like maybe like 500-600 points of my army is wizards. Right?
Yep.
And maybe I take an endless spell. Maybe not. And then from there, I'm free to sort of slot in what I want. Right? Like I have an incentive that I've built on. And now it's like, okay, what do I want to play from here? Do I want to do, you know, all Chaos Knights and have like a fast chargey army that I then, you know, do some spell buffs on with Chaos Orc Lords and stuff like that? Or do I want to do like, you know, a bunch of Marauders or whatever, right? Like I can start using individual start making individual choices, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And make the list what I want it to be, right? Same thing with most of the stuff in there, by the way. Like, Despoiler is the same thing. Like, yeah, you should probably have a Demon Prince leading it. And it's like...
Right. You should have a Demon Prince and probably Bellacore, because he also triggers all that Demon Prince things. Sure. And he's a great independent actor.
Right.
And that's enough.
Like, that's enough.
You're done.
And by the way, I've run plenty of Despoilers lists without Bellacore, and I'm like, yeah, okay.
Right.
There you go.
Right. Yep.
And... you know, Cities is the same way, by the way. When you look at those cities, like they give you all these soft incentives for like this is kind of how the city plays.
Right.
But
right.
most of them take a pretty weak hand. You know, you look at Living City and it's like it's ambush stuff. And I've seen everybody talking about ambushing from everything from like steam tanks to Sylvaneth to massive units of Iron Drakes to like Luminarchs, right? I mean, it's just like wide open, man. You know, what are you doing? Because you like have a shooting attack is basically the you must be this tall to ride this ride, right?
Right.
So, they both do such a fantastic job of being in that space, right?
Yep.
And I think that a lot of the other books in that sweet spot of the golden square, also like do that to some degree or another, right?
So Andrew asked, do linked heroes such as Iron Scales with snakes make things too linear? I'm going to jump in and say I don't think so, as long as all the rest of the book doesn't point you down the snakes route.
Right. Yeah. The key with linear is it's like, and this is where, you know, like this is where Doc can run into some problems, is it's like, okay, here's your snake, snake, do all snakes. You know, now, Doc has a really high internal parity, so it's pulling you in a lot of different directions.
Right.
But it does put you, like, on a set of rails a little harder than probably you should. If it was, like, just the Melusai, no. But it's, like, the Melusai plus Xanther Kai plus Viperic Guard, right? And
so let's do an exercise. I think that this is perfect, Vince.
Okay.
So let's look at... This is going to be great.
I'm ready.
Let's look at one of the sub-factions.
Okay.
Kraith.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So Kraith's hallmark ability. Do you remember what Kraith's hallmark ability is?
At the end of combat, after all units have fought, roll a dice for each unit of Kraith Sisters of Slaughter that have fought this round on a 5+. They may fight again.
Okay. This is a perfect example of linear design. Because what Kraith says is that if you are playing any other unit that is not Sisters of Slaughter in combat, that is a subpar choice.
Right. You don't get this ability.
Yeah. If you are playing anything but Sisters of Slaughter, this is Ipsum Lorem Text.
Right. Yes.
Okay. And so what you're incentivized, the way they have written Kraith, is to say only play Sisters of Slaughter in Kraith.
Yep.
And they have not created any incentive structure to play non-Sisters of Slaughter in Kraith. So, an example of like 45-degree design here would have been to do something like this. At the end of combat, if a unit has fought, roll a dice. On a 6+, that unit fights again.
If the unit has the Sisters of Slaughter keyword, add +1 to the roll.
There you go.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
So what it does is it does this. It says, this is the subfaction of Sisters of Slaughter.
Right.
Because they are extra effective in this faction. But you're allowed to play other things and still get the benefits.
Right.
And the problem is that that's not what they wrote. They wrote something that says only play Sisters of Slaughter. If you have Witch Elves, go take a hike.
Right. Right. Look elsewhere.
Sorry, Chuck.
280 Witch Elves. Kraith player. Ouch. And I think that is like, you know, so one of the things Doe said is linear design is almost described as exponential increase in power when you push it in a single direction. I think it can be, and that's where I was pointing at like the balance problem, right? Like at its worst, at the darkest timeline of linear design is all your builds are made for you, the book becomes boring, and everything is basically whacked as far as power goes, because it's either in its exact home and firing at like mega efficacy, and needs to be like so drastically overpointed because it assumes all the buffs, right? Or it's useless.
Right.
Right? Like that's linear design at its worst.
Right.
Right. And so
is it pre makes all the decisions for you. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Cool. So I what else haven't we touched on, Tom? I mean, this is everything that I sort of teed up to cover. Like, did we miss anything in our design language discussion? Bottom up, top down, linear, modular, what easy to read mean, what inspiration means, all this kind of stuff. Hopefully, question out there for the people in the chat. Did this all make sense? Was this interesting? Do you agree with me that like design quality is actually a thing? That's like, if I can get a yes on that, I'm gonna feel like this is all success, because that's really been the thing. I want to give people this language, so when you see something on the internet like Sun Metal and it rubs you the wrong way, those sword masters, like it did me, right? That we don't immediately default. Like I saw people posting damage readouts from what Sun Metal weapons do. Like you even know anything about what they're capable of with synergies, buffs, and other stuff that could happen, even remotely. But like, that's so not the point. I don't care what damage they do.
Right. Yeah. Like, so let's return back to the Swordmasters as like a wrap up. So the challenge with Swordmasters, as they're currently written, is that it presents you with two bad decisions as a player. Because when I go to hit, I can choose to do one of two things. Either I take away interactivity.
Yep.
Okay. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to auto hit.
Right.
So all of your penalties to hit, all your defenses that you've built your list around, I'm going to ignore. So either I ignore interactivity, or I now decide that I'm going to do my area attacks and have to count every one of my 10 models in the unit 2 inches out and figure out how 50, 60, 70 attacks, how many attacks these 10 models are going to get against this unit.
Yep.
And we're going to spend 10 minutes calculating how many models are within 2 inches of every single model in my unit.
Right. I can't wait for the incredibly bad feeling of a Gloomspite Gitz player playing the Lumineth player.
Right. Because like the Gloomspite, so the funny thing about this, and I actually brought that up in our chat prior to the show, is that like the Gloomspite Gitz has the worst of all possible feelings here.
Sure.
Because they are utterly hosed by flurry of blows.
Sure. Either you get like 1 million attacks against them at the -1, but then doing a ton of like mortal wounds and just stuff, or you just ignore their negative to hit penalties with perfect strike.
Right. So like as a Gloomspite, like I am incentivized, I have to put all these penalties on you.
Right.
Because otherwise you are going to cut me down with flurry of blows. But if I do that, you're just going to ignore all of them.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's just a lose-lose, and it results in all the goblins dying anyways. And so that's when we talk about bad design, it's the feeling that you know, like that this is the key to MPE, right?
Yep.
MPE is the experience of the player on the other side of the table that is experiencing bad design.
Yep.
You could have MPE with good design if power levels are out of whack.
Sure.
But good design can help curtail MPE.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
yep.
Those are my thoughts. I think that like good design should inspire. It should be easy to read. It should be gentle in its encouragement of decisions. What I mean by that is it should softly encourage you to make certain decisions. It should serve as like a roadmap, but it should be non-determinative.
Yeah, sure. Yep. it should be a big map with like clear signage and everything laid out, but then you get to decide the road you want to drive down, the path you're going to take. Are you going on the highways? Do you want to avoid tolls? Do you want a scenic view? Right? Like, what do you want to do?
Right.
You know?
Right. And some books do this really well.
Yes.
Some books don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Okay, and so Doe said I'd love an episode on Marrow's 20 lessons learned from 20 years of Magic through an AoS Warhammer Fantasy lens. One of my texts, love that talk. I've watched it 100 times. I think Rosewater's one of the sort of paragons of design thought in our time. That would be a great episode. Well, guess what? If you liked this, come back next week where we're gonna have a special guest who has quite a lot of experience with designing games. An active game designer. We're going to talk about his projects, past and present, talk about the rules of design, and talk about sort of making these things real and the applicability of this to games and how he thinks about it in the war games he makes. So, very much looking forward to next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. For all of you out there who watched, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, give it a like. Hit that like button. It's so easy. It's one click, and it just helps so much to help people find the show, increases the engagement, all that sort of stuff. So we really, really appreciate it if you just hit that like button. And subscribe if you haven't already, of course, as always. Folks, we'll see you next Wednesday.